welcome to the Glendale City Council Workshop of October 16, 2012. Mr. Skeet, would you please introduce the first item?
Thank you, Vice Mayor, members of the council. The first item is an energy efficient community block grant project report, an update that I've asked staff to put together for you. This was part of the stimulus funding, grant funding that we received in 2010. The total amount received through this grant was $2.3 million. The staff, Ms. Watenko and Mr. Stuart Kent, Executive Director of Public Works, will now walk you through some of the details of the projects, how it was used, and where we are today. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Kent.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Skeet. Good afternoon, Vice Mayor, members of the council. Just a couple of quick comments, and really Ms. Wojtenko is going to carry most of the water for the presentation today. I just wanted to highlight the real, the advantage of this grant. Unlike most of the grants the city receives, whether it's for airport or other function, there's always some sort of other match that has to occur. This was part of the federal stimulus effort that occurred in 2010, and so the $2.3 million did not require any city match from the city. So the $2.3 million we then used to best identify what the greatest amount of energy savings related projects and the other components of the grant we had to comply with, so we could maximize the value to the city and to its residents. With that, I'll introduce Ms. Wojtenko, who's the Deputy Field Operation Public Works Director, and she'll go through the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Kent, Mr. Skeet. Good afternoon, Vice Mayor and Council. As Mr. Skeet and Mr. Kent have stated, this is an update of the Energy Efficiency Block Grant. Council awarded or accepted award in March 2010 of the $2.3 million grant, which is part of the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. The goals of the grant were to create jobs, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and to save energy. So with those goals in mind, city staff with representation from Community and Economic Development, Parks, Recreation and Library, Budget, Water Services, and Public Works developed a series of projects. The projects we looked at were those that had a return on the investment, both in reducing time and maintenance efforts. We looked internally at the city buildings and resources we had, but we also looked at what projects would benefit the public. And then we also looked at outdated technology, any technological improvements that we could make to help us out. So generally what we've got here is we had some initial projects that focused on public education and staff training, and then 6 infrastructure improvement projects. Through the infrastructure improvement projects, the top 2 we list there, the Arrowhead UV system and the Well 43, are both ongoing. The next 4 that I've listed there are completed, and those 4 completed plus some others saw savings, and the savings mainly due to the competitive construction environment we had in early 2010 through 2011. So we've used those savings to complete some additional projects. Projects being the material recovery facility lighting, lighting improvements at the equipment management facility, and then the parking garages. We wrapped in the public safety court complex parking garage, as well as the parking garage here at this building, and the downtown parking garage, and we've completed lighting on those. The last additional project that we've added is the solar lighting in the parks, which just came before you a couple weeks ago and is moving forward on that one. So I'd like to mainly focus today on the infrastructure projects, but I'd like to touch just briefly on the education projects as well. Our education projects were basically an Energy Matters program, and the first thing we did was we developed a website, and I put the link up there, so if anybody wants to go to that website, they can. But this website has a series of videos, links, and tips on it. The links go to different energy education sites, as well as our local electricity providers here in Glendale. So both Arizona Public Service and SRP websites are linked to our website. The Department of Energy website's also linked there because they've got some great energy saving tips. As part of the energy education workshops, we did green festivals. We just had our second one in March 2012, very well attended. And during those festivals, we did green living classes, things from tree care and backyard composting through simple savings for energies. We had exhibits from over 30 different green vendors, and green vendors being things for water gene energy efficiency, recycling, but also alternative modes of transportation. And at the festival, we also had family zones, so we could get the young children involved with some hands-on type exhibits and get them interacting with different things that we had. One of the other things we offer as part of the energy education workshops is a series of classes, and we have 4 more classes between, actually tomorrow, we've got one scheduled for tomorrow, between tomorrow and the end of the calendar year. The class tomorrow is backyard composting, greening your home, and it's at the main library tomorrow evening from 6 to 8 p.m. And if anybody wants more information on that, they can go to the website. The other classes offered throughout the end of the year or before the end of the year include simple energy savings and greening your home. During these classes, we also hand out to every participant some very simple energy saving devices, ranging from low flow shower heads, which not only save you water, but they also save you energy, because you don't have to heat as much water, and also the energy that it takes to produce clean water, usable water for households. We also hand out programmable thermostats, and then a 4-pack of compact fluorescent light bulbs. And we've been able to do so through the grant, as well as in cooperation with some of our local vendors here in town. The other one I do want to highlight is our Watt Watchers program, and actually this picture over here is actually a Watt Watcher itself, and we've got several of these that we hand out, and they're available at all libraries. We hand them out to the public so they can actually take them home and find out about the hidden energy thieves, per se, in your house. And if we want to take something as simple as your cell phone, when you plug it in to charge it, you know, it's using energy, but when you unplug your cell phone and leave the charger plugged into the wall, it's actually still consuming electricity. And so this device will actually show you how much different appliances and chargers are actually using. So we have numerous of those available, and there's also a video available on the website to show you how this device works. So through these different energy programs we put together, we've had over 1,000 families from Glendale participate in them. And EPA has a calculator online for each of these devices, and if we plug in the number of devices we've handed out, if everybody uses these, it could be some astronomical savings for each of them. And the actual calculator says $1.5 million in energy saved, which, you know, is always an overestimate, but if everything was done in an ideal world, that's the potential amount. The other education component we did was building safety program enhancements. And this is essentially training for our inspectors and updated code books to comply with the International Energy Conservation Codes. And that was presented to the Sustainability Committee back in September 2011. Can
you give some examples of this new energy efficient code? What are they actually trying to tell us in building safety? Is it a mandate that we have to follow, certain new buildings have to follow this, or what is actually?
Vice Mayor and Council, I would probably at this point defer to Ms. Mazoyer, who next week will be presenting this to Council, because that's when the energy updates are going to be coming forward in terms of the Council for the evening meeting that night. The updates to the city codes are going to be coming forward. Then she can probably better touch on that, but we can potentially get you a memo in the interim between now and then to highlight answer your questions.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So to highlight 2 of our infrastructure projects, the first one I'd like to touch on is the main library. It was opened in 1987, and at the time built with the most current state-of-the-art technology. But over time, we've had several challenges, and we used the opportunity of this grant to solve some of those challenges, ranging from technology to lack of lighting. We redesigned the entire building. The entire lighting system within the main library was redesigned and rebuilt as part of this project. So it was essentially a multi-phased approach, and we replaced over 4,500 fixtures as part of this project. One issue we had was we had low lighting, and this is kind of highlighted in this picture here. This is an after picture, and if we want to look at each of these shelves of books, librarians call them the stacks, and you see the lighting here runs perpendicular to those. Prior to this project, it ran parallel, so the light fixtures were almost essentially over top of the bookshelves. And what this did was it created huge dark issues down here. So we still see some shadows here, but prior to this lighting project, it was extremely dark in there, to the point where we were getting complaints from people that they couldn't pull books off the bottom shelves. They couldn't actually read the titles to the books. So we wanted to make sure we solved that problem for the library as we were going through doing this project. Other issues we had was in these troughs here, we had fluorescent light tubes, and these tubes were state-of-the-art in 1987 for industrial or commercial facilities, and these were the long 8-foot fluorescent tubes, and one tube could handle 8 feet of lighting. We found through time that it was extremely maintenance intensive. You know, if you've ever gone to replace a fluorescent tube that's 2 feet or 3 feet long, you understand trying to get both ends in at the same time and twist it can be somewhat of a challenge. Imagine that poor worker working up 25 or 30 feet in the air trying to replace an 8-foot light bulb. We found that it was pretty inefficient. We had to send 2 people. So us having the opportunity to break this down into smaller light bulbs allowed us to just be able to send one worker over there to change light bulbs. In addition to that, we had one 8-foot light bulb, and when that light bulb burnt out, we had no lighting in the area. So now instead we've got staggered 4-foot or 3-foot sections of lights. So when one goes out, we have a redundant light. So it's not as urgent of a request when a light fixture does, or when a light bulb does burn out. The other issue we had was, as of July 2012, 8-foot fluorescent tubes are no longer manufactured. So if we didn't have any in stock, we weren't going to be able to replace these anyway. So this solved a number of issues we had. And then we looked at other things to enhance the lighting in the library and to potentially save us some energy. This photograph here is actually in the atrium, which is just a beautiful area in the main library as you walk in the main door. Has numerous skylights within it. Well, prior to this project, the lights were either on or off, and now they're controlled by sensors. And so during the day, if it's a nice bright sunny day like today, the lights are off. But as it transitions to nighttime, through dusk, or even as a cloud goes past, the sensors notice that and will turn the light on from a complete off to an on position in a full range of it. So it only gives us the lighting that's required. We also use these sensors near windows because the main library also has numerous windows as well. So we don't need to overlight the edges of the library as well. We then moved along to the auditoriums, looked at perimeter lighting versus central lighting, broke it up until we could only have the zone that we needed on at that time. And because savings were occurring, we got as far as exterior lighting in the parking lot. We're able to do the majority of that as well. So what we've seen for the main library is not only an $18,690 savings in annual cost, there's also a reduced maintenance requirement out there as well.
Very good.
We met our grant requirement by saving the kilowatt hours of energy, which equates to greenhouse gas emissions. But what we also saw from this project was that there was no single solution that worked for the entire building, so we had to be very open-minded to multiple different solutions. The next project I really want to touch on is sport courts. We looked at 11 parks throughout the city. These parks are O'Neill Park, Rose Lane Park, Bonsall North, Mary Silva, Sonorita, Clavelito, Glendale High, Sands Park, Choya, Acoma, and Chaparral. And this picture here is actually of the Sands Park after the lighting project was completed. Sands Park is one over here, 55th Avenue, just north of Orangewood. We looked at these courts in conjunction with parks, police, code enforcement, and the facilities division of the Public Works Department. We were looking for not only reduced maintenance costs, but also increased public security. As with the solar lighting, this allows the police officers to drive past and to be able to see what's going on in the sports courts versus actually having to get out of the vehicle. We've seen reduced vandalism and graffiti on these structures as well because of this project. We looked at the tennis, the handball, and the basketball courts at these things. And similar to the main library project, we looked at reduced maintenance costs, and we've seen that. And one of the reasons why is this pole here, I selected this picture because these two fixtures here are the new fixtures, and this one over on the other side is the old fixture. And what we've gone from there is from a single bulb to a fixture that has 4 bulbs within it. And that allows us to, when one bulb burns out, it's no longer an urgent requirement to go replace it. We still have 3 other working bulbs in there. So we also added a dimming feature, an occupancy sensor, so the lights go extremely bright when somebody walks past it to help PD out as well with that feature. Our initial budget for this project was about $120,000, but using a different technology. And we did a cost-benefit analysis looking at maintenance and that type of thing. So even after we originally developed projects in early 2010, by the time we went around to implementing it in later 2010, we saw significant savings just by looking at newer technologies.
I've got a question.
Sure.
Is this also parks that where you were having vandalism a lot with the lighting, or where these were enhancements, or did you actually add new lighting too, and it was strictly solar? Because I know a lot of the parks were being vandalized. They were somehow getting inside and taking the wiring out and doing so much damage it could take months before we could get it repaired. Now that you've alleviated that through solar, is that an added benefit?
This is, Vice Mayor Freit, good question. This is different than the solar project. The solar one, we're doing exactly what you just stated there. This project has already been completed, and these were just over the sport courts.
Okay.
We were seeing some vandalism of the light fixtures and of the copper wiring, but not to the same extent that we did with the other ones we proposed for solar.
Thank you.
Thanks. So going through these projects, we learned multiple lessons. One being, which we attempted to standardize fixtures and bulbs where practical to save on that maintenance trip, where if the electrician knew what to expect when he reached the park or building, it would help save him materials he needed on his vehicle. Conversion of the fixtures from a one lamp to a multi-lamp fixture meant that every time a fixture or a bulb burnt out, it wasn't an urgent replacement type thing. It allowed us a little bit more luxury in terms of when we actually got out there to fix it. We are also able to enhance the quality of the light output. I'm sure if you've seen in the parking garage here at this structure, we've gone from a yellowish light to a much whiter light, and that allows security officers who's viewing the tapes or that type of thing to notice the color of the cars, but also gives you a little bit more comfort as you walk through it because it is a brighter light. And the other thing we looked at was the heat output from the fixtures. Lights generate heat, and so anytime we can reduce that, we reduce the air conditioning load on the building. So the benefits we saw from the energy efficiency block grant projects, it allowed us to add these additional projects, including solar lighting, which we've just talked about. The financial benefits, the highlighted projects in your memo there show $329,000 in annual savings to the city's electric bill. In terms of the grant requirements to create jobs, we've created 9.2 jobs per the Department of Energy's formula for the lighting projects. It's 11.67 overall by the time we add in the other projects that are still ongoing. Greenhouse gases, we've met that requirement. We've reduced over 700 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent, and that's equivalent to about taking 130 passenger vehicles off the roadways. And we have received rebates. We've received over $75,000 from the energy providers locally here to date. And that really concludes my presentation, so if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Any questions? Councilmember Clark.
Thank you, Mayor. On page 3 of your presentation, budget and financial impact, I understand that the 1.97 or the 2.3, whichever figure, it was stimulus funds, but you also said that you spent over $4 million in other funding sources. What other funding sources were used for that $4 million?
Mayor, Councilmember Clark, that is specifically related to the water services projects. That's the Arrowhead ultraviolet light disinfection projects in the Well 43. So both of those are water services capital improvement projects.
So they were out of city funding?
That was city funding, correct.
Okay. So it wasn't grant funded?
Those were not grant funded, that's correct.
Well, yeah, I guess, Mayor, Councilmember Clark, part of it was their total project cost might have been closer to, say, adding those two numbers closer to $5.1, $5.2 million. The just under 1.1 million that they got, they applied that towards that UV project. So they saved essentially about 20% of the project by applying that grant money to it. But the rest of it was city money. You're correct from that standpoint.
So were these projects, I'm just curious, were these projects with regard to water services necessary, or was it convenient because we had grant funding to use the grant funding, utilize the grant funding as well as city funding to do these projects.
Right. Mayor, Councilmember Clark, the UV project at the Arrowhead plant was a long planned project that was already scheduled to be done. The fact that when the project was being developed in 2010 and the grant funding became available, we were able to essentially tie the two opportunities together to apply some of the grant funding towards that and essentially lower the capital cost of that water services project.
Okay, yeah, I see here, the grant was a little over $1 million, and then out of utilities CIP, $4 million.
Correct.
Okay. And then my second question was, I think these public education and staff training projects were great. How much of the stimulus money went to cover that aspect of the program? Public education and staff training.
Yeah, Mayor, Councilmember Clark, I believe I have those numbers here. Let me just be a second to actually find them.
That's fine, take your
Okay,
time.
thank you.
Mayor, Councilmember, I can speak to the second half only because I spoke with Ms. Mazoyer a little bit before the meeting. The building safety projects that relates to the staff training was probably less than $5,000 of the total grant amount. The remainder that Ms. Wojtenko is pulling together will be the amount related to the rest of the community education program, which is approximately $175,000.
Okay. And did a lot of that money go for the energy saving devices that were provided to the public?
Mayor, Councilmember Clark, a portion of it did. Some of our partners, including APS and SRP, donated some of the things like the compact fluorescent bulbs. Part of the project funds also included the hiring of a part-time person to help coordinate all the efforts and the energy within the environmental resources group. I don't have the specific breakdown of what was widgets and what was the staff time, but we can provide that.
I would like to see that. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Certainly.
Councilmember Knapp.
Thank you. I just want to say that with this grant, we were also able to go into the schools and do energy conservation, which we've always done a wonderful job of water conservation, but this gave us the opportunity to go in. And I know some of that money was used for staffing for that purpose, but I think well worth it. I've heard nothing but rave reviews from schools that have had our programs come in there, so I just want to commend you for that. Thank you.
Thank you. And I guess I want to make sure I defer the credit where it's due, because it's certainly not, I mean, it's not Michelle, really Joe Miller and the Environmental Resources Group really did the majority of the public education component. So I want to make sure to acknowledge her contributions and her staff's contributions.
Councilmember Martinez.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Wojtenko, in your presentation you mentioned thermostats, and I just didn't get in what context. Was some of that money used for thermostats that were issued to those that attended some of these presentations?
Yes, but, Mayor, Councilmember Martinez, that's correct. As part of these classes that we held in the Green Festival, we were able to hand out programmable thermostats to the residents that attended the classes. So that's, and as Mr. Kent stated, those were both donated by our local energy providers, as well as the initial couple were purchased. So everybody who's attended those classes has had the opportunity to take those home with them.
I should have attended one of those classes because I bought a thermostat here not too long ago, and they cost a few bucks. So that's very good, though. Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I do have a question. Here you are on your way out, but you know, I get asked a lot, and probably others do too, and it's usually with younger folks. Like I was at Ironwood High School a week or so ago, and 3 or 4 students from the Science and Environmental Club came up and talked to me. The question is always, what is the city doing to, you know, in environmental efforts and so forth? So is this kind of information available to people on the website that we can direct them to?
Mayor, it certainly is, and what we'll make sure to do is coordinate where we have it posted, not only where the agendas are posted for the council, but also posted on the Environmental Resources website, which is most folks would be going to look for if they're trying to find resource and information. We'll make sure we post the presentation there as well.
That would be great.
Right, and
Oh,
actually the website,
there we go.
I'll re-announce it, Mayor, and take the opportunity to publicly It's at the Glendale AZ website under energy programs.
Great.
All sorts of information about energy activities and opportunities to save energy and other environmental programs are all within that area.
Thank you. I probably missed that slide before I came in, but I get a lot of questions, so that's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're not waiting on that.
Oh, we're not? Okay. Well, Mr. Skeet, would you introduce item number 2, please?
Mayor, members of the council, item number 2, I just wanted to take the opportunity to provide you with a few updates of ongoing projects and activities that otherwise would pop up and surprise in some surprise meeting later on during the process as we develop alternative. The first project that I wanted to give you some update on is the Glen Lakes Municipal Golf Course. The Glen Lakes Municipal Golf Course was built in 1966 on 44 acres. It's a 9-hole golf course. In 1979, the city bought that golf course for $1.1 million. We have been managing, we've been basically contracting out the management of this golf course throughout the years to various golf professional and service providers. We had a contract that was issued in 2008 for a 10-year contract for services to provide and keep the golf course open. That contract that staff is currently working with the contractor to basically at this point, review the terms and conditions and some violations of those contracts. Upon reviewing of the documentation and the information that we've received, we found that since July of 2011 they have not paid us the rent that was contractually obligated through this process. That's about $84,000. They've had a number. We've found a number of other violations of the terms and conditions of the contract, and is in the process of developing some remediation to recapture the revenues unpaid and void the contract and basically take it out to market for another option, an alternative. I bring this to you because we in addition to the fact that we found the fact that the management company is delinquent in some of their obligations, we've also been talking about selling off of city assets. And this asset was listed back in April of 2012 as one of the assets that may be eligible for sale. At this point, since we are at this crossroad, I wanted to bring it to your attention that we have a contract that is voidable at this point because of non-performance or lack of adequate performance. And we are at this crossroad where we are contemplating selling city assets. We've looked at and collected some estimates from the real estate and appraisal markets as far as what are the options and what an asset like this might bring to us. And we have a wide range of fees, revenues that can be generated from a sale of an asset like this. If we were to sell this with the golf course restriction on it, to make sure that it deed restricted, to make sure that it remains a golf course, estimates are somewhere in the $1 million range. However, if we were to entertain the idea of alternative use, which predominantly would be a residential rezoning case that would have to incur it, we could probably fetch somewhere in the $2.5 to $3 million range for the sale of that 44 acres. So, just wanted to bring it to your attention and also point out that if we the length of time this golf course has been in the community as an open space, and if we are to continue to discuss the options of selling it, to kind of get some feedback and some discussion going with you as to whether or not we would want to consider selling it, and with a deed restriction on it for it to continue to be maintained as a golf course, or if we were to contemplated rezoning it and basically dealing with with all of the rezoning and rezoning implications of the converting a golf course that has been in existence since 1966 into a residential development lot. If whichever direction you provide, or whichever way you would like us to proceed with this, we would engage the appropriate professional staff from the outside to basically begin to do some evaluations of the price, the possible value that we can get from this, and also the economic and community benefits and losses as a result of the conversion from a golf course. I don't know if anyone I know I was not here when we contemplated a similar action in the Desert Mirage golf course, and we got a severe outcry from the community, the residential community there, and in fact, since then has deed restricted it to a golf course. So again, just wanted to put this on the table at this point for discussion. The alternative would be if we were to just decide to continue to own it and lease out the assets and for an outside management company. Currently, I should point out in all of this discussion that the operations has always been, since I've been here over the last 8 years, really been a neutral cost to the city. It has not cost the city anything. In some of the earlier contracts, we did receive some payment for rent and revenue sharing. This contract was developed in that same fashion. However, over the last year or so, we have not been receiving the rent and the revenue shares that we have for the contract. So,
Councilmember Martinez.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Skeeto answered the question I was going to ask. Is it costing us, besides the revenues that we're losing that are not coming in, do we have some costs to the city? And you just answered that it's neutral. So that answers that. With respect to perhaps putting on the market, I would support that. Perhaps putting it up for sale, but that's my initial
Councilmember
response to
Lieberman.
that.
Thank you. Are they out of trust? Do they owe us rent? Do they owe us payments? How far behind are they? Or are they behind?
Mayor, Councilmember Lieberman, yes, they have not made a rent payment since July of 2011.
They're $84,000 behind.
How much?
$84,000.
They're behind.
Yes. We have not received audited annual financial statements. We have not seen some of the capital improvements that the contract requires them to provide. I think in our review and check, we also found that they lowered the performance bond, the performance bond as it was required by the contract, from $450,000 to $225,000.
They have not. They're out of bond or out of trust.
They've lowered the bond requirements without our authorization.
Are they behind in their water bill?
I don't have that particular piece of data with me.
But that's possible also.
Probably. Say probably.
Probably. Yes, I agree with you.
Well,
totally.
we ought to know that. Can we
Well,
ask
somebody
Mr.
can check while we're doing this meeting. Maybe one of the staff members can find out real quickly and get the information to us. Councilmember Clark.
Thank you, Mayor. I know that part of the problem with Desert Mirage was that people adjacent to the golf course or the proposed golf course had paid premiums for their lots. Is that the same situation surrounding Glen Lakes, or was it so long ago they didn't offer premiums?
Mayor, Councilmember Clark, we can find no reference, no specific reference, or no reason for anybody to be reliant on the golf course as being as part of the development. However, it's been there for so long that that would be an argument, I'm sure, that would be raised by
And
the...
I would have to think about it, but on first blush, you said the magic words. It's been there so long. How could we do this to the surrounding neighborhoods? I can see selling it deed restricted so that it remains a golf course, but I don't see how we could sell it and rezone it and stuff homes in there. I think the same kind of situation we faced at Desert Mirage, we would face with all of those who have an expectation that the golf course remains, and it affects their quality of life. I don't know, but I would say I would support selling it based upon the limited information we've received, but I think I would keep it deed restricted.
Mayor?
I would say that the Desert Mirage situation does not in any way apply to this situation, because I was here during the Desert Mirage situation. Those people were sold, and they could prove that they were sold homes and paid premiums for golf course lots, that there was going to be a golf course. There was never any money set aside for it or anything like that, but the builders misrepresented the situation, so we built a golf course. In this particular situation, I think the market is telling us that there's really not a lot of interest in this type of golfing opportunity. The market has pretty much gone away, and I think we'd be hard-pressed. We are very hard-pressed to find anybody who can really operate Desert Mirage and keep it going. I mean, that's another sorry subject, and I would like to know if they're behind in their rents or their water or whatever. But there's really not a market for this. So I support maybe cutting the baby in half here. I think that we could go out to the communities, because those people that are there are not original owners. This is not like Desert Mirage, where they had just bought their homes, built them a few years ago, and were waiting for the golf course. Those homes have changed hands many times. In fact, I'm trying to think, isn't it condos that are across the street? They're condos, they may be rentals, I don't know what they are. But I think that this property lends itself to residential uses, which are usually very well received by other residences, but the property could be marketed with a requirement for a buffer that would give the green space or the greenery look, or so maybe preserve part of what's there as the golf course, and that could be part of the required zoning. And then I don't know how many acres that would be, but sell the rest of it off for or offer it for residential use. But definitely go out to the surrounding neighborhoods and get their opinion and talk to them about it. But I really feel the alternative in the not too distant future will be no golf course, because nobody can afford to operate it, because the market is just not there for this type of golf experience. So then they're left with a mess that's not kept up, not maintained, and so forth. So that's the way I'd go. Councilmember Martinez.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Skeet, I thought I understood you to say that if it were put up for sale with the restriction that it remain a golf course. Did I hear that right or not?
One of the options we have available to us
That
would be to restrict it, but the value is probably diminished by 2/3 by exercising such an option.
But I still feel that it should, at least try to put it on the market and see what the market tells us. If we don't get a response, then I certainly would agree with the mayor that we could, look at that option.
Councilmember Lieberman.
The northern and 55th property is some of the best property available in the city. You may not recall, and yes, it was during a boom economy, the Takaguchi's men's market started out and they're rebuilding homes or creating homes to sell at $170,000. And the market is so good, and they sold so many that they ended up closing their subdivision out with homes in the $330,000 bracket. There is no reason why that land wouldn't sell to Lennar and I use that just as X name. It could be any number of current subdividers because that location is prime.
Councilmember Knack?
Thank you, Mayor. That golf course is probably to the east of that golf course. The homes don't face it. They face north and south. To the north, they're condos. And I kind of chuckle about this because I get complaints all the time from those residents with the golf balls hitting their stucco.
Right.
Seriously, since I've been on council, I've had more complaints about the golf balls hitting their structures. So those would be, and then on the west, there's a big area there on that street, and older homes that are there. So I actually think your idea of a buffer, to protect those condos from being right next to it, I would agree that would be a great idea. But I also think nothing's forever. The whole golfing industry has changed, and municipal golf courses are not all doing that well. So I would definitely want community input from the neighbors, but I definitely would also consider putting it up for sale.
For residential.
For residential.
For
Yes, for
residential,
residential.
without
Yeah.
the restriction. Vice Mayor Freight?
Actually, isn't the underlying zoning usually in areas like that is residential to begin with, isn't it? Like if it reverts back, just like churches,
Agriculture, maybe?
R16 usually.
R16 usually, so is that correct?
Mayor, Council, Vice Mayor Fred, I am not sure what's the underlying zoning on this particular piece of property.
I agree with my colleagues that, I would like to, look at that. Obviously you want to go into the neighbors and see what their thought is. Any type of new building, revitalizing the area there, everyone benefits from that. And I agree with the buffer that, for those that are used to seeing a little bit of open space. It's not like they're seeing a lush green grasses, there. It's not. It's a municipal golf course. City of Phoenix is having the same problems with Encanto and some of the other golf courses. When everybody says, "Oh, don't blame the economy," yeah, you have to because it's affecting all the whole spectrum in other cities. So if the economy picks up, possibly more people would be golfing, but it doesn't seem to be that, and and I think probably the profit margin to operate these golf courses in this economic time is very difficult, and that's why you're seeing not just Glendale, but across the nation on municipal golf courses. So I would support outreach with the community. And I was going to bring up the same thing about, I'm sure somebody out there has been getting hit with golf balls. And sure enough, that's what you said. So, you're going to get those individual homeowners that are adjacent to the course say, maybe it's not a bad idea if it was residential. And like I say, new housing in the city of Glendale, we're not making any more land in the city, and people want to stay in Glendale. So they want to, maybe they outgrow their homes and they want to build a larger home or maybe a more energy efficient home, and this gives them the ability to do that.
Mayor, Vice Mayor Fred, I've been told that the land is still zoned agriculture.
Oh,
still
So
agriculture.
we would have to undertake a rezoning case.
Councilmember Lieberman?
Thank you, Mayor. At one time, when West Valley Mall was being built, there was even talk of converting that into a parking lot. I don't remember for sure, but I think it was in those days C2 zoning. And then there was talk of expanding West Valley Mall and putting another shopping center diagonally across 55th and Northern in that very lot where the golf course is. I lived at 5548 West Belmont, and the shopping center was in my backyard.
Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Martinez.
I would like to have some more information on this. For example, how many rounds are played for the last, say, few years? Have those been dropping drastically? This golf course, as everybody has said, has been there for quite some time, and it is an amenity. And even though with the economy, yes, it's probably going down as have the others, it's still more affordable than, say, going to Maryvale or some of the larger courses.
Correct.
So I think that's something that also that at least for myself that I would need.
You know, I look at it, I think, differently. This is a time when we're looking out across this room and we're looking at people who don't know whether they're going to have a job here or not. Okay, we look at, I see Mr. Serrata back there, we don't know whether we're going to have amenities called festivals anymore. And I weigh this 9-hole golf course with a small number of users against parks and recreation programs that are open to everybody that we're chopping out of our budget. And we don't know if they're ever going to come back. And I think we've tried for so many years to give everybody whatever it is their particular interest wants. And we just can't do that anymore. And I think we have an opportunity now to revitalize a neighborhood. Well, I shouldn't say it's revitalize, but further enhance a neighborhood, to bring new housing to an area that could use it, even if it's not, it may not even be single-family residential, it may be senior housing, which is pretty popular in that particular area. So we have an opportunity to bring new housing. It would fit in well with the neighborhood. I think we could offer adequate protection to the neighbors who are used to, what do they see if they're looking out their door from the condos? They see trees? So they could have a buffer of trees. They're really not watching golfers.
Right.
Okay, so you have a buffer of trees, and we could bring funds into this city to reduce the debt that we have. And when we reduce the debt, that reduces the draw from the general fund so that the debt is paid the way it should be, and we don't have to draw so much from the general fund. When we don't draw so much from the general fund, we protect the jobs of the people in front of us and maybe keep some of the parks and recreation features that, you know, maybe 75% of the people in the city use instead of a very small percentage. So I feel very strongly, we'll see which way the majority goes, but I feel very, very strongly that this is the opportunity now to this is a time to maximize an opportunity to the benefit of the greater number of citizens in Glendale. Councilmember Clark.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, thank goodness a decision does not have to be made immediately. Because I think, as we've all indicated, it's important that we go to the neighborhoods that would be immediately affected by this. We may find 100% support in the condos for converting this to residential. We may find that the people to the west abhor the idea. But I think we at least have learned over the years that we really need to go back to the neighborhoods and ask them what their expectation is. And I agree with Councilmember Martinez. Right now it's revenue neutral. We paid, I think you said, somewhere in the neighborhood of $1 million for it. The worst case scenario would be to sell a deed restricted and still make $1 million. So it's not like we wouldn't make any money from selling this land. It's just the matter of how much do we make. And I think in determining which way we go, it's really important that we go back to the neighborhoods.
Councilmember Lieberman.
Thank you. Mr. Strunk, did you find out what the water bill is?
Hi, Mayor and Council. The answer is kind of a two-part question. The course itself is, Councilmember Lieberman, the course itself is water with SRP water, and we've received no notification from SRP that there are any issues with payment in that area. And then I spoke with Ms. Goki with respect to city utilities. There's a portion of it that's paid, that's city utilities, the clubhouse, the drinking fountains. Per our policy, it's confidential, and then the policy basically is after 2 months of non-payment, you can become a DD, you can get shut off. And to our knowledge, on our most recent inspection, the water is still on. And there are no issues with that we're aware of with respect to electricity or any of the other utilities that are at the course.
What did you know? Issues with what?
Electricity.
Oh, electricity.
Yeah, payment.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. It's not our business anyway. Does that
Thank
satisfy your question?
Yes, but I have more.
Okay,
At what
Council-
point do we say that we have had enough and we close it? Because for 84,000, we're supporting them when we have so many other programs that we have to cut out. We couldn't put a fire department parade on 10 days ago, simply because we didn't have, depending on what you hear, 14,000, 16,000, 20,000, but certainly nowhere near 84,000. And at what point do we say, enough is enough, let's close this, rather than going further in debt?
Mayor, Councilmember Lieberman, the arrangement with the management company does not put us in any additional debt. This is monies that they are owing to us. This is not monies that we are paying. This is monies that we should be collecting. So it does hurt the city's bottom line, because there are $84,000 at least out there that is not collected, that is not being collected to date. We have initiated contact and conversations with the manager of the facility, and we are trying to work through those arrangements to get payments for the rent owed.
Same question, how much further do we allow them to go into debt? One way or another, it's money that is not going into the city coffers.
I agree with you, Councilmember Lieberman, hence the reason why we're here today talking about it.
Well, I thank you for bringing up the subject. It's most interesting.
Councilmember Martinez.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one last word on this golf course. Also, I believe it is, we talked, all of us at one time or another, about quality of life, and to me this is one of those things I think that adds to the quality of life. And as far as the golf balls, I think that anytime you build something next to a golf course, you know what's there, and so you take the consequences. And in full disclosure, I am a golfer.
Yeah, I was gonna.
And you live on a golf course, so you get golf balls.
I didn't say that. No.
Do you have anything to say? Well, we pretty much are at a standstill here. So you have, I think the one thing is to start talking to the neighborhoods, but I don't know what we're telling you to talk to them about. Because half say it should stay deed restricted, half say it should be offered for residential, and Councilmember Alvarez doesn't have an opinion either way, so.
Mayor, members of the council, I think I have sufficient guidance to initiate some conversation and some directions with this project.
What would that be?
I definitely would want to engage the community, the neighborhood community, about alternatives, either with a deed restrictions, possibly letting them know that the city is contemplating the sale of the facility, and whether or not the sentiment is for it to continue to remain as a golf course and the deed restrictions option, or if they're open to alternative residential development. I think one of the things we can also do to help us make that decision in the not too distant future is also to engage some of the economists to evaluate the pros and cons for the alternative uses that we might propose from a planning perspective, and see if there are any economic values and what would be some of the economic considerations as we go through this process of developing this.
And I would like to see data, as Councilmember Martinez asked, I'd like to see about a 5-year spread of users of the course, number of users, if there's particular times, there's some months nobody's there, whatever. And also, I don't remember, is that place run such that you pay one fee if you're resident and a different fee if you're not, so that we can find out whether these are residents or non-residents using it?
That's information that I would task staff to begin to collect and provide to you.
I would like to see a 5-year spread on that, and I think...
Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Alvarez.
It isn't that I don't have an opinion, it's that we've had other accounts that have gone up to 90,000 and were never collected. So it just depends who the person is. The other thing is, I don't see how they could have gotten that behind when our customers, which are the people that live out there in the neighborhood, if they get behind, then they catch that right away. The $88,000 or $84,000 is too much money not to catch on. And so what does staff have to say? how come it took so long for us to know about it?
Councilmember Alvarez, in looking in reviewing the contracts that we have, we discovered this, and the Parks and Recreation staff brought this to my attention about 2 or 3 months ago, at least, that this was the developing situation. We began to try to work with the management company to see if there was an alternative management agreement and arrangement based on information that he could provide us. We are not getting anywhere with any cooperation and alternative management structures for the arrangement, so that we can bring this back to you. The intention was to try to bring this back to you with an amendment based on the economic situations that he might have provided us. He did not provide us with adequate information, so we, over the last 2 months or so, I proceeded to give staff directions to let's just wrap this up and move on. We either move on to trying to find another operator, or look at some of the alternatives. At the same time, we were beginning to talk about the alternatives of selling, so I thought this was an appropriate time to bring that before I would go out and solicit from other operators to possibly run the golf course, knowing that it may be a short-term arrangements and not necessarily be attractive if that's the situation.
And I understand that, but the thing is that we've got constituents out there that have called because they can't pay all the bill and they can only pay part of the bill. And we're looking at that very closely. And then we have a manager or management company that can owe us $84,000, is quite a bit. And I know of another developer that owes us still $90,000 of water. And we haven't done anything, and I've brought it up to you and to Mr. Beasley. I brought it up. You know, we have to treat everybody the same, not be looking at just the customer, the average customer that pays his bill every month, and just because these are developers or because they're management companies, we need to look at those even closer.
Councilmember Alvarez, since you brought it to my attention that there was a developer that owes the city somewhere in the vicinity of $90,000 for water, I've asked the water department to look into that situation and get me back some more detailed information. I have not yet received that information. I can assure you, as soon as I receive that information, I will provide it to you and the members of the council as far as if there are any outstanding water bills from any particular from a particular developer, and if so, how much and when, and what course of action has been taken by staff to try and recover that water bill. We about 2.5-3 months ago, we brought to council for action a collection contract where delinquent water bills and sales tax operations have now been turned over and is being turned over now to a collection agency for collection of outstanding amounts. This was an activity that staff has been trying to manage and has been managing internally for a number of years. We have evaluated that situation and directed and came to the conclusion that we are better served by contracting out that collections operations. And if there are any outstanding water bills to the tune of $90,000, I can assure you that that portion of that bill will be sent to a collection agency. But I'm not going to just leave it there. I'm going to try to find that bill in and among the $4 million of water bills outstanding over the decades of outstanding bills, and find that and report that back to you as soon as I can.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to offer a couple of comments. Number one, I'd like to express recognition and appreciation for efforts that are being made now to not let problems get out of hand as they have in the past, and let accounts contractual payments, whatever you want to call them, just drift while we work things out and months go by and maybe a year or more, so forth. At the same time, I'd like to support what Councilmember Alvarez is saying, to the extent that I think, I mean, we remember that we were surprised to find out that the rent on the arena hadn't been paid for months, year, more than a year. Did we know that? No, nobody knew that. But, you know, or none of us knew that, but it was known elsewhere. What I would say, and I don't know if Councilmember Alvarez was thinking this way or not, but if there's direction given from you, from your office, that any of these types of situations are to be reported within, say, 60 days, that's definitely long enough, as far as I'm concerned, for someone to be delinquent without there being some focused attention on it. I think this might go a long way. I think perhaps there's been a feeling that was generated through past individuals that you just don't bring things up, or certain problems or whatever, and I think that needs to change. You look at the mess we're in now. Okay, we had the commotion when all of a sudden the $1.5 million in back rental tax things, or was that water on rentals or
Sales tax.
Yeah, and it just created a huge commotion. So we shouldn't let these problems get to the point where they become an all-out community war. And so I support the premise that I believe Councilmember Alvarez is bringing forward, and say that within administration, not with us, but within administration, I feel strongly there should be just sort of word out that we just don't tolerate these things. We're not going to go shut everybody's water off, you know, the first time they miss a bill, but that the delinquencies need to rise to the top very quickly and action taken very quickly, and that investigating and researching shouldn't take 3, 4, 5 months, and the problem just goes on. And Glen Lakes is just kind of an example of that. I understand there was a contract, so you're somewhat hampered in what you can do because there is a contract, but the contract probably dealt with default. I think there's just been an attitude that it's okay to let things slip, and we just can't do that now because we have too many people depending on that revenue, and it has to be here. So that's my opinion. Councilmember Martinez.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to follow up on that because I feel very strongly about that also. Because I don't know about, I'm sure just about everybody here has heard from residents, I know I have, that have had their water turned off. Have had their water turned off. And they don't get a second chance. I mean, they're given a delinquency notice, that I forget the number of days, and if you don't pay it by then, your water is shut off. There's no two ways about it. And I'm just last week I had one that, you know, I mean, it was terrible. There were 4 kids involved. I asked, were they under what age? Because I know that in certain instances that you cannot turn it off, but these were in their teens, but there were 4 teens or less than teen, but in that neighborhood, and the water was turned off. And even though they had made a payment, but they hadn't made perhaps they didn't need it on their bill. It was all laid out, but they didn't pay enough to avoid the closure. And they had the water turned off, and they did go back and turn it on and made arrangements to do it in that instance. But there's been other instances. There's just been something needs to be looked at.
Councilmember Lieberman.
I had mine shut off for $109. I was 12 days over the last delinquency, and the wife called and said, "They just shut our water off." I said, "You're kidding. Don't they know who I am?" No. And that's the truth. You can check your records. I had mine shut off over $109. Ridiculous.
Well, one was shut off for $54.
Oh, yes?
One of the ones that I'm referring to.
Councilmember Clark.
I think we all have horror stories about constituents with delinquent bills. And I know my last one was kind of a catch-22 because they got the money together to pay the bill, got there, and then they had like a surcharge for making a
They
late
didn't have the
payment.
surcharge,
So they
yeah.
had enough money to pay the bill, but didn't have enough money to pay the surcharge, and had to keep the water off until they could scramble around and find the surcharge payment. So I agree with what everybody said. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. If we're going to do that to our citizens, well then, just because you're bigger than the average citizen doesn't give you the right to go longer and get away with delinquencies just because you're a company or a big corporation.
Mayor,
So as you
Councilmembers,
develop your
understood.
new procedures and processes, I think that you're hearing that we would like you to give some thought to making sure everybody and your staff knows that situations should not be allowed to just lay dormant. They need to be elevated immediately.
Sure that. I think the message is loud and clear.
Yeah, that's right. And the headline will be that Councilmember Lieberman and his wife had their water turned off at their house for non-payment of their utilities bill.
I like it. I think it's great.
You got that back there, Catherine?
$109.
I think we had something else in this item before.
Yes, we
Okay.
do. Mayor, along those lines there, I think about a year ago, we started to look at, we had an expiration of a management contract for the youth sports fields, and we were working through the details of trying to get that out to market, and extended the agreement, the arrangement with Global Spectrum for a couple months to attempt to do that. We was not successful in completing our task in getting it to market in a competitive bid process. So we took over the operations in the interim while we cleaned up the specifications and took it to market. And we did that during the course of the year. We went out to bid. We received one bid, one responsive bid from Global Spectrum. After a number of months of trying to work through the details of the contract, we have reached agreement on the contract for management of the youth sports fields, and we would be bringing this forward to you now to transition it back to a privatized operations where Global Spectrum would be responsible for managing and operating the youth sports fields that is used in conjunction with the University of Phoenix Stadium for parking of mega events on those youth sports fields. The general terms you would see in the contract agreement that would be coming forward to you, the overall annual cost is somewhere in the vicinity of $322,000 a year to operate the youth sports fields and manage those facilities. There's about $106,000 worth of utilities included in that number. The rest of it is a management fee, and also maintenance and the responsibility for maintenance. In the previous contracts, we had a 60-40 revenue split for users of the sports fields when it's rented out for sporting events and activities. This new contract has a 50-50 split of the revenues, so some of that revenues would come back to us. If the last year of operation is any indication, they collected about slightly over $100,000 in revenues from rentals that we would now share with them on a 50-50 basis. So that contract is scheduled to is completed now. Negotiations are complete, and it's scheduled to come back to you probably in November for final approval. So,
Councilmember Clark?
Two things. Would you take a moment to explain why, when we're looking at selling everything off, we can't sell this off like we wish we could? What is involved in not being able to sell this property?
Mayor, Councilmember Clark, this youth sports field is 14 acres that was bought by the city in conjunction with our obligations to provide parking for the University of Phoenix Stadium for activities that generate more than 40,000 attendees. They can activate what is called mega event and therefore require all of the 25,000 parking spaces that is potentially required by such an event. The operations of the youth sports fields and the contract with the Cardinals require that we provide some grass areas for parking. The contract, I think, originally obligated us to about 1,500 parking spaces. We have since worked with the AZSTA and the Cardinals, and the 14 acres actually only provides slightly over 1,000 parking spaces, but we are given credit for the 1,500 spaces that we are obligated to provide on grass parking as a result of the effort to secure and maintain this youth sports fields.
Let me ask a second question. Just as in the proposed Coyotes agreement, we put in performance standards that we had never had before and penalties for not achieving those standards. In this particular contract, have we put in any performance standards, since they are responsible for renting out the fields? Have we put in any performance standards such as they must rent out for X number of days a year, or anything comparable to what we're doing with regard to the Coyotes lease management agreement?
Mayor, Councilmember Clark, I do not recall that anything specific with regards to renting of the fields was included in the contract. The performance standards that we have included is specifically, I think, related to the maintenance of and upkeep of the facility.
Well, I would respectfully suggest that we look at incorporating, even if it takes it a little longer for this contract to be presented to council, that we look at perhaps including some performance standards so that we know that there is an incentive on their part to get these fields rented out and utilized as much as possible, because that is revenue generating for us as well as them. So I would humbly suggest that we might consider doing that.
I'd like to revisit this subject of the whole youth sports field thing and how we got into this mess. Is this the land we purchased from the Pendergast family?
That's correct.
No.
Okay.
We purchased it, if I may correct you, off of Malcolm, who purchased it off the Pendergast family 7 hours before Colson bought it for $1.1 million more.
Let's go
Same
back.
land you're talking about.
Let's tell this story, because somewhere in this whole mess, when we got involved in this, all we needed to do was to provide parking, which we can do without lights and without games and without so forth. So somehow or other, when this all started, let's see, the Fiesta Bowl was going to build a Fiesta Bowl office and museum. That's it. We were going to get a museum. And the Pendergast family was being very helpful, and they were somehow or other going to buy the land, and we weren't going to have this expense, and the Fiesta Bowl was going to put a museum there and an office, and this was a wonderful thing that we were going to do. And before we knew it, the situation Councilmember Lieberman's talking about, where somebody sold it to somebody, and then we ended up spending millions of dollars. We have it. It was developed into youth sports field, which was going to be absolutely marvelous for the community, excepting that it immediately had certain select teams from certain select organizations that got to use it without any bidding. They just were picked to use it. And I remember I got into a discussion with what's that name? Karen, that used to be in economic development. Yeah, Karen Thorson, and I don't know if Julie Frazzoni was there or Kathy Gorm, somebody, and I was pretty much told to mind my own business and stop asking questions. So I'd like to revisit how we got these 14 acres and how they became a youth sports complex, and if it could just go back to being parking, which is what we were contractually obligated to do, and what that would cost. Do you remember all the details, or were you not here?
I was here, Mayor. I'm not sure I'm equipped today to recollect all of the details of that. But I do know that the youth sports field, the requirement for the AZSTA agreement with us was that we provide at least 1,500 parking spaces on grass. And they were to be adjacent to the stadium. We worked out a lease arrangement with the Pendergast family for the initial use of the facility.
And the Fiesta Bowl was going to pay a big part of that.
And we then embarked on developing the youth sports fields as part of this endeavor. And the Fiesta Bowl, I think we carved out about 2 acres of land from that 14 acres for the Fiesta Bowl facility, and in exchange for that, they contributed some sizable sum of monies towards the development of the youth sports fields. I hesitate to guess as to how much of that. I wanted to say 500,000, but it might have been closer to $1 million total.
And was there going to be annual payments from the Fiesta Bowl for this? Because this was going to be a big money maker for us, is what we were told.
The annual payments, the initial payment by the Fiesta Bowl was for that property that was carved out and held for them to develop their office, and we would, if they were to build that facility, then collect rent from lease payments from the land there. That whole plan, as it was originally designed, and as I recall, was never developed.
No, in fact, it was very shortly after that Fiesta Bowl happily announced the location of their new offices in Scottsdale and their museum, surprising even Tempe, who didn't know they were leaving them either. So I think they knew all along they were going to Scottsdale, but go on. So
from then on, basically, we used the revenues that we collected from the AZSDA. I think the $1 million was from the AZSDA for the development of the youth sports fields, and some amount less than that was from the Fiesta Bowl. We used those revenues along with a couple $1 million of our own CIP park improvement monies to develop the premium field and the facility as it is laid out today. Immediately contracting with the AZSDA and Global Spectrum for maintenance of and operations of the facilities from the beginning, at somewhere in the vicinity of $250,000 a year for that contract to maintain and operate the facilities. After about 5 years, that initial contract expired, and we went out to bid. And we had some problems with the specifications and the lack of response, and that's when we decided to try to extend the month-to-month arrangement with AZSDA, giving us a little bit of time to fix the bids. When that process extended beyond 3 months, I decided at that point that we were going to take it over by the Parks and Rec, complete the process independent of the AZSDA and Global Spectrum involvement in the management of the facility, and taking it out for a clean bid and the process here. They have been responsible for any maintenance and any damages that might occur on the facility during the football or special event, where sprinklers or ruts may be developed in the sports fields because of their parking, in particular if there was a rainy Sunday or a rainy day or so, and they have been maintaining and replacing those things. One of the issues that we found when we took it over was that a number of the trees and landscaping was poorly maintained and actually not replaced. We have since, during our period of operating it, replaced a number of the trees, and I think that's the performance measurements that I think we have put into this contract. But as far as renting the facility, no, we have not. The facility costs us about $106,000 in utilities. That includes I think about $60,000 in electric bill for use of the facilities during the course of late evening events. And the rest
That's
of
when it's used as a sports
That's when
complex,
it's used
not
as a
for
sport.
parking lot.
Very few times would we have to actually turn the lights on when it's used as a parking lot. We have had to do that, but very few times. And so, in the meantime, I think somewhere in the interim, we entered into the purchase we considered purchasing it from the Pendergast, and it was sold to a broker, an intermediate broker that we then entered into an agreement to purchase it, and I think the information Councilmember Lieberman provided is the same information I received as far as the process of the transaction and the cost of the transaction to us. In a matter of days or hours, it is reported that the city bought it for close to $1 million more than it was sold.
Since there was a contract there of how it was to be used, how did the Pendergast family have the ability to sell it to somebody else when there was a prescribed use? I mean, we're talking about these golf courses and, you know, there's an expectation to be a golf course. How did they have the right to sell it when we had the contract with the AZSTA to use it for parking?
Mayor, I think that was I don't know the ins and outs of that process and how it developed, but I think that was all part of the negotiated process for us to buy it because we did have the option to buy it.
So in other words, somebody in the city knew this was going on, that the Pendergasts were going to sell to the broker, and the broker was going to raise the price $1 million and sell it to us. Somebody in the city knew that was going on, and that was negotiated?
I don't know. I don't know that somebody knew the details of the contract of the arrangements. I do know that the city was negotiating with this broker on behalf of the Pendergasts.
That sounds terrible. I mean, it was presented to us when it came to council as this big surprise. The Pendergast went off and sold this to the broker, and now we've got to buy it from the broker so we can fulfill the parking. And now you're telling me the city was negotiating all the time on this. Go ahead.
No, I
Okay.
don't think so.
The lease was a 12-year lease for $242,000 a year with a 5% escalator clause. And Art came to me, and I'm sure he came to the rest of you. What?
Art Lynch?
Art Lynch, and said that if we buy the land, and there was nothing in our lease with Pendergast that prohibited him from selling the land as long as all the conditions remained the same. Art didn't tell me that there was a broker who was going to make $1.1 million in 5 hours on that was in the newspaper, on the same land. Art told me that in the 12-year period, we would save, if we bought the land for the $5.1 million instead of the $4 million, we would save over our lease approximately $2.2 or something million in that 12 years. The difference in between what we would pay at $242 a year with the 5% escalator clause, which added $12,000 every year to it. And so Colson did a negotiation with a guy from Carlsbad named Malcolm, who coincidentally happens to be known to my family, not because they did any business with him. He negotiated with Clarence Pendergast. Then he came and negotiated a price with us for $5.1 million or something like that, and then went back and bought it for $4 million off of Clancy Pendergast. But in the terms of the lease that he bought, that he sold to us, they had to keep the same parking spots. They couldn't change the lease for so many years. And that is the way I remembered it.
Interesting.
Mayor,
Councilmember Alvarez.
and you told us that how much does that bring in income to the city, the rental?
Nothing.
Mayor, Councilmember Alvarez, I think the rental revenues that we've collected in the past was in the vicinity of $30,000 to $40,000.
What's the
From-
net? What's the net? What our costs are, and then what our income is? What's the net difference?
The operating expenses associated with that management fee at the time when that $30,000 to $40,000 in revenue was somewhere in the $275,000.
So now, that's it, under parks, you can rent, you've been renting this sports?
Yes.
And what is the rental fee now? Who can use this park? Everybody, right?
That's correct.
So if there's a team that wanted to use it, how much would they pay?
Councilmember Alvarez, I don't have the details of the rental rates. I'm assuming it would be different based on whether you're playing in the daytime or in the nighttime, and whether you're renting it for one event or a season or those kinds of content. But I'm sure I can get that information from the Parks and Recs Department.
I'd like to have that because, since I've been here, it's more like it cost us, but then we don't have any money. I mean, they didn't pay anything, or they're not paying anything. When I talk to you, I tell you, I really don't know, so you always say zero. So I'm tired of hearing zero from like Camelback Ranch or from other places that we don't get any money. I just can't understand what kind of financial people would have that would advise us to put money in knowing that we're not going to get any money in return.
Mayor, Councilmember Alvarez, I will get, since I know that we have been operating the facility for at least 9 months, I will be able to provide to you and the members of the council the operating costs associated that we've paid and the revenues that we've collected for rental activities at the fields. I will be able to provide that for you.
Thank you.
Will we know all this before we vote on a contract with Global Spectrum? I mean, we don't have to use it as a youth sports field, right? So would we see these figures? What would it cost us annually if we just provided the parking that we're contractually required to provide? Versus what will it cost us annually in order to have this youth sports field that people have to pay money to go use? It's not like it's a free open park for everybody. Because, again, we're cutting our own recreation programs and then paying other people to, well, anyway, I'd like to see a comparison.
Mayor, members of the council, we will include that detail in the staff report.
Mayor,
You graduated high school.
Councilmember Clark.
I'd still like to see some performance standards. And I haven't heard from the rest of council whether anyone agrees with that concept, but I think if we're going to pay that kind of money to Global Spectrum, I think they have an obligation to try to book it as much as possible.
I would support that.
I think that, sorry. I have no problem looking at performance standards, but I think we need to know how it works right now.
Contractually. Yeah.
I
What
agree.
performance standard, I mean,
I agree.
but I have no problem
Well,
looking at it.
we don't have enough information
No,
right
not at all.
Yeah, but if I understood correctly, you've already gone out to bid, you've received a proposal. The bid did not include performance standards. It said so many events per year, whatever. You've determined the Global Spectrum met the bid requirements, and you're getting ready to prepare a lease agreement to bring to us. So if there is majority consensus from this council, you want performance standards, then it seems like you need a new RFP if that's legal.
Mayor, if certain performance standards as described by Councilmember Clark and others is not included in the specifications, then the alternative would be to reject the bid and rebid it with those standards if we had to, in order to incorporate them.
I think it should be rebid. I think there should be an opportunity to at least review whether there is an opportunity to generate additional revenue on the site.
I agree.
I would second it.
I'm fine with it.
Okay, so we have the legal right to reject the bid and say we have a new specification, we're gonna do a new RFP.
We always do.
Okay, I think it's a great idea because I think absolutely nobody will bid on it with the performance standards, and then we can just turn it back into parking. So I think it's a great idea. I mean, it's one thing if you own a team and that team has to have a building to play in, and so you're going to enter an agreement, you're getting a subsidy anyway to help with your team. This is a different thing, so I think it's great. Let's see who bids on this with performance standards. How many events do you want them to provide?
That's what I think Mr. Skate needs to.
I mean, you would have to know what the performance has been up to this point. You can't just pull a number out of thin air.
Okay, so you're going to reject what you have and go out to develop a new RFP and take it out.
That's the guidance I'm hearing.
Okay. And so what happens in the meantime? Do we still run it as a sports complex and use our own recreation department to book it, or do we not run it as a sports complex? What do we do in the meantime?
In the meantime, Mayor and Council, the Parks and Recreation Department will continue to operate it until such time as we receive the bids and evaluate them and bring it back to you.
So when you give us the cost of what it costs to run the facility without it being a sports complex, and would you include the cost for the staff in Parks and Recreation also?
Mayor, that would be the basis for my estimates as to what it would cost to run it as just simply a grass parking area compared to a youth sports complex that is also used for parking.
So there's the utilities, because I would guess there's a greater water component using it as a sports facility than there would be just as the parking. So there's a greater water, there's a greater electricity, greater maintenance. They got to come pick up the trash and do all that. There's the cost of booking the facility, the staff that has to book it and so forth. People have to be out there at the time of the events to watch and make sure nothing happens and so forth. So all of that will be included in the cost of running it as a sports facility.
That's correct.
Okay.
And we do have, like I said, I think pretty close to a year, 8-9 months worth of experience. So we can figure out exactly what it would cost to continue to run it as a sports facility that is also used for parking compared to a parking facility that is grass.
Does that sports complex offer some opportunities that are not offered at the Western Regional Park or down in the Paseo, all those parks that are off of the Grand Canal? It's not the Paseo, the Grand Canal, Linear Park, and that type of thing?
Mayor, council members, yes, this facility has bleachers, it has concessions and restrooms built into it, and so it does offer some more amenities than some of the other parks.
Do we still have some sort of agreements with the Copper Canyon High School for some sort of sports trade-offs and use of facilities and so forth and so on? We had management had entered into something with Copper Canyon High School.
Mayor, I do know that we had some parking arrangements to use the Copper Canyon parking facilities, and it might have included some after-school programs and also some lighting of the ball fields, which is common that we've used. But I know that we have not used the Copper Canyon for parking since the opening season.
So we don't pay them money anymore? No. Okay. I think Councilmember, you had your hand up.
Yes, a very similar question. I thought we were Golden Spectrum, or somebody was under contract to provide that practice field for high schools or something. Every now and then I see them out there in their colored jerseys, or have in the past, and I wondered if there was any existing contracts that are still valid in regard to that sports field.
Mayor, Councilmember Lieberman, those contracts are with us now, and we are managing the rental of the facility. At this point.
They are still valid then, yes. Okay.
And that's who?
I don't know all of the users of the facility, but there are a number of entities that rent the facility.
That rent it.
Yes.
Yes, Councilmember Clark.
The colored shirts are league that rent the facility. Now, whether they rent it for all season or for one event, I cannot tell you. But it seems to me, I remember that with regard to being able to utilize the parking at Copper Canyon, our part of the deal was to install the lighting on their football field. And I believe that was that was the requirement. We completed that a long time ago. And that was what the quid pro quo was, to utilize their parking.
I was thinking more about how we were spending, I don't know, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year to put on classes at Copper Canyon.
But I don't think that was part of the agreement. I think that was a separate agreement where we were partnering with Copper Canyon, and I believe there was another entity involved that I can't remember the name of right now, to provide like culinary arts classes and public safety classes, and it was that kind of thing. But those programs have ceased as well.
That's correct.
That is.
I think they were being run through our police department, and the costs were in the police department. Are those costs gone from the police department also?
Mayor, council members, we no longer operate the programs at Copper Canyon High School. The grant funding have since dried up.
Exactly.
It'll be interesting to learn all this information that maybe we don't have. What's next?
That's it.
I know he has something else on here.
Mayor, members of the council, I just wanted to kind of wrap up and provide some feedback for some of the public information. And we've had 3 public education events on the services that may be removed from the city's operating budget should the revenues from the sales tax go away. I just wanted to provide a little bit of a recap for where we are on that and some of the feedback I've received, as well as clear up a few outstanding pieces of information that has been requested over the last 3 or 4 weeks. Some at the council meetings and some at those public hearings. Just by way of summary, since 2009, the general fund has been reduced by about 23% and over 210 full-time equivalent positions. The fund balance in the highest fund balance recorded by the city was in 2006 at $72.5 million. During the course of the recession, we have basically used the fund balance as a cushion to minimize the reduction in services to the community, and that fund balance was recorded last fiscal year, ended at $11.7 million. And if you may recall, during the last budget session, it was expected to fall even further to about a little over $2 million. Just to put that in perspective, I just wanted to share that information, as well as the fact that the general fund revenues that is under the most severe pressure from and the associated reductions in services being offered today, if the sales tax revenues were not collected, has also seen about a $50 million decline over the last 5 years.
What has?
The general fund. In 2008, it peaked at about $177 million.
Are you talking about revenues?
The general fund revenues. Yes. In 2012, it bottomed out at about $127 million for about a 28% reduction in a decrease in the revenues. The main sources of the revenues for the general fund is the city sales tax and the state share revenues. The city sales tax saw a 20% decline, about $13 million between 2007 and 2010. The state share revenues also saw a $22 million decline during that similar period.
What's that percentage?
33%.
33%?
Yeah, 33%. It went from $66 million at its peak in 2008 to $44 million.
Between the two was
What was the percentage?
53% reduction.
30? 33.
Some of the things that we have engaged in, some of the activities that we have engaged in over the last 6 weeks or so, was one of the things we did was we presented to you a number of different scenarios for consideration and not for consideration, for just to view the situation as it may result if those sales tax revenues was to be removed through the ballot initiative. I also engaged a number of the city employees and received outside of the traditional executive directors group in a conversation. They met about 5 times over the course of 3 weeks to review and provide staff and provide leadership with some additional information as far as possible service areas for reduction and possible things for consideration. We received some very good feedback from them through those discussions, and we'll continue to engage that level of the staff in the process as we go forward in developing next year's budget and any strategic plan that we might have to do with or without the sales tax revenue over the coming months. In addition to that, we also had three public meetings that we engaged. We tried to engage the public in sharing this information, in sharing the information and the cuts and reduction in services that may occur as a result of this. I think generally what I would like to do is just provide you with a few bullet points and some editorial comments on some of the feedback that we have received and some of the conversations that we are hearing in those evening meetings. A lot of the conversation is centered around the arena management agreement. Quite a number of the people passing through my station, the way how those meetings are developed, they're divided into four groups, and a lot of the people then rotate through each one of those groups in the evening, and then also make a public comment period. I've received a number of comments and concerns about the process we used as a city to engage the management of the arena. There was a lot of concerns and questioning about why we didn't go out for a competitive bid process. There was a lot of concerns and comments about the existing approved agreement and the fact that it was considered by most of those people as too high. There was some compliments, but also agony with the proposed agreement. To put it somewhat in a quote by one of the residents, thanks, Mr. Skeet. You've done a pretty good job of renegotiating the agreement. Close but no cigar. They were still not exactly happy, but understood the parameters and the difficulties that we were working in, and would like to see if services have to be cut, that we continue to look at opportunities to not only renegotiate this agreement, but also the Camelback Ranch facility that has also been a topic in the conversations with the public. Much misinformation or lack of information, I suppose, is probably a better way to describe the Camelback Ranch agreements. There was continued shock and surprise as to the fact that after 5 years we have not been able to see any of the proposed development around that facility that would help offset some of the payments. There was lots of conversations about the management agreement with that facility. It has been capitalized in the fact that we are renting those facilities to the 2 Major League Baseball teams for $2 a year. And there was a lot of questions around how and why did we do that. I'd like to take this opportunity to explain that a little bit, because as ridiculous as that exercise, as ridiculous as those numbers might sound, the rationale behind the management agreement that we have with the Dodgers and the White Sox to manage the Camelback Ranch facilities is one that is exactly opposite to just about every other sporting facility, baseball spring training facility in the valley. Most of the jurisdictions that own that these facilities reside in own and operate the facilities and lease them out to the teams for some what might be considered reasonable lease fee for the one for use of the facilities. I went and I looked at and I compared our $2 a year in revenues that we collect from the facilities to what is happening in the city of Goodyear and Peoria. I used those two facilities as comparisons. I looked at I had the finance department look at the financial statements of those two jurisdictions and how they were operated. And since they are operated exactly opposite to the way we are, those cities are managing those facilities as enterprise funds. The cost of operating the facilities is borne entirely by the city. The revenues generated at the facilities is collected by the city, and the net bottom line figure for those two jurisdictions, as reported in the last CAFR, in the last financial statement, show that the city of Goodyear had a net operating loss of $1.6 million. And I use Goodyear because their facility opened the same year as ours. So when we compare our $2 of revenues to the $1.6 million in loss that the city of Goodyear is experiencing as a result of managing those facilities, our management agreement probably doesn't look as bad as it is made out to be when it is just taken out of context as just simply a $2 management lease agreement, because none of that operating loss is borne by the city of Glendale. Peoria, that has been operating their facility for pretty close to 20 years, I think, also reported, I think, somewhere in the vicinity of a $1.4 million loss in operating revenues over operating expenses last year. So none of these facilities, from one of the oldest one in the West Valley to one that was built similar at the same time with us, are operating at any profit or gain income, and in fact, it's costing those cities somewhere in the $1.5 million range to operate.
And you know, going back to the previous item, if you think about what it's costing us to operate the youth sports complex, which you said is 14 acres, right. You just extrapolate it to, what's this, 200 acres?
These are about 120 acres.
120, so that would be 10 times more, only these have clubhouses and all kinds of expensive other buildings that would cost more. I didn't mean to interrupt, but it makes perfect sense if you think of what we were just talking about with the youth sports complex. The Councilmember Lieberman.
Didn't I just read where Phoenix paid us $87,000 for our share of the sales tax from this season this year?
That's correct, Councilmember Lieberman.
That is a correct figure. So that's on the plus side also. Now, the biggest problem we had is both the developers, Glenn Burton with Rick Burton with Right Path Limited, and HB Equities entity in Banavik, all have gone bankrupt since then. and the land that they were going to buy for Mortgages Limited also went bankrupt, as well as, unfortunately, the principal CEO killed himself. So the whole financial thing in regard to Camelback Ranch, Glendale, is terrible. Now, there is one other thing, however, and that's that the name may not stay because the naming rights are still in both leases. Both teams have the right, if they wanted to change the name if they can get us to. I don't even know that they have to agree with it, because I don't think we had to agree with jobbing.com arena. But the naming rights, I think, and our city attorney can correct me, is in the leases.
Vice
Yes.
Mayor Freight?
Mr. Ski, you said how many meetings did you have? 3?
We had 3 meetings, and there's a 4th one scheduled for October 30th, I think.
What's the attendance been at these meetings?
The average attendance has been somewhere in the mid-20s. I think we might have peaked at about 30 residents at the 3 facilities. They have
So
not.
between the 3 meetings, less than 100?
That's correct.
One other
I'm
question,
sorry,
Mayor.
okay, yes.
The road connecting Maryland to 115th that I guess is up to us to build. Is there any plans? Is there anything doing with that?
Councilmember Lieberman, Mayor Councilmember Lieberman, no.
No.
No. It is designed, the rights of way have been documented, and the easements over ADOT and with SRP, we're in the process of documenting the agreements to build those, but at this point, we are not contemplating building any of it.
Thank you.
Councilmember Clark?
I went to the meeting at Desert Mirage. There were approximately 25, if that, in attendance. Of those people, we have many of the usual players that you will be familiar with. Rod Williams, Ken Jones and his wife, another couple. And those people led the charge in being opposed to just about anything that staff had to say, and questioned staff vigorously at every station that they were at. The public was given an opportunity after all 4 stations were visited to present their remarks. And I will say that with the exception of this one group who was anti-everything, that the general sentiment, because I talked to a lot of people afterwards, was that although they did not like the sales tax, they were going to vote no on Proposition 457. As one woman put it, it was to ensure the future of Glendale and to see that Glendale move forward. And that was the general sentiment that I saw from the result of one city meeting.
I attended the one at the Adult Center. It did not have any of the what you call usual suspects. It had our regular citizens, a lot of whom I've known for many, many years. And I don't know if you saved those long sheets of paper that staff wrote on. And I think those would be good if they're available for everybody to go read. I would say 70% of the comments were relative to the Coyotes and the Arena Management Agreement. At the very end, in fact, Jerry McCoy was an excellent MC or moderator or facilitator or whatever he was, and he even made the comment, he said that more people spoke at that meeting than had spoken at all of the other meetings combined. I don't think that there was a single family, because in many instances there was a husband and wife. I don't think there was a single family that did not have at least one person speak. And they, like Councilmember Clark said, that they are going to hold their nose and they're going to vote against Proposition 457 because they do not want to lose the services, but they also lambasted us about the Coyote situation and that they did not want to see more money given to Greg Jameson or anybody else. And that was pretty much the root of our problem. You were at that meeting. I don't think they got into Camelback Ranch too much. They pretty much were focused on, they touched on it, but pretty much focused on the whole coyotes thing. So yes, I'm hearing more and more people say they want to keep the services here. At the same time, in all honesty, they're also saying the coyotes, Greg Jameson, that agreement, that's the problem. It needs to go. So, didn't mean to get you off track here, but yes,
Mayor?
Councilmember Clark.
You know, I'm just going to say one thing. If there were no coyotes, Mr. Skeet, we'd still have to pay for some kind of management company to operate the arena, true?
That's one option. The other option would be to close it.
Exactly. We still have to pay the construction bond on the arena, whether it's open or closed, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. In my mind, and it remains this way, it isn't a matter of the coyotes. I think when people focus in on the coyotes, that's an easy target. What it is an attempt to keep the arena viable, thereby keeping Westgate viable. I don't want to go into this whole discussion again, but suffice to say that saying that the solution is the removal of the team and that therefore we will have no expenses associated with the arena is not correct. It never has been correct. It never will be correct. It's just a matter of how much are we going to pay. And reasonable people can differ on what that amount should be. Now, I personally believe that $11 million to guarantee 70 events, because it's, I understand, 40 hockey nights and 30 non-hockey events, that's 70 events, is a reasonable fee. Others do not feel that way. But then others point to a smaller amount of money but have no concept of what the actual number of events would be guaranteed in the facility. And it could be considerably less than 70. So I understand that it's very easy to point the finger at the coyotes and say that this is all the coyotes' fault. But I say again, we would have to pay for this facility, open or closed, minimally the construction debt on the facility, with it open, a management fee to someone. I believe at this point that $11 million for 70 events is a reasonable number.
And I'm one of those people that disagrees, and I'm going to put this right out in the open. It's not about $11 million, it's about $320 million. It's about looking at these people that are sitting right here in the audience and not being able to guarantee them they will have a job in a month, 6 months, a year, that will be able to pay their salaries, but we are going to pay a person who's going to own a hockey team $320 million, and we're going to do that because there's going to be a contract that's not going to let us out of it. We just talked about having a problem with collecting $84,000 from somebody that manages Glen Lakes. The reason we do not know, and the reason that person who says that it can be managed for less doesn't know the answer, is because there has not been a will of this council to find out what that number is. And I call openly for this council to go out for bid for an arena manager. You know, I wanted to get together the figures of what Global Spectrum brings to the stadium each year, and quite honestly ran out of time. But it's in the neighborhood of 160 programmed days a year, days and or nights, whatever you want to look at. If you take out the football games, there's what, 15? No, 12, 11, whatever. 160 days of bringing people in. Maybe they're bringing them into the Home and Garden Show, 100,000 people to the Home and Garden Show. Do you think some of those might escape to Westgate and go shop there and eat there? I think so, probably. I would imagine at least 10%. They bring them in for all sorts of different things. But we don't have that number, and we don't have what that real cost is. For somebody who could go out and program 70 events, 80, 90, 100, 125, whatever. We need to know that number so that it's not constantly, well, that's not right because you don't know what the real number is. And it's not 11 million, it's 11 million this year, and how much would it be next year?
14,
And then what the next year?
15.
Okay, and then what the next year? 15 again?
15 again.
Okay, and at a time when we're saying, should we sell the golf course, should we do this, should we do that, to bring money in, that bill goes up, and it's by contract, it will have to be paid. So it's not 11 million, it's $320 million once you go down that path, and that's what the people are upset about. No two ways about it. The people that I listen to, and I know you were there, the same one, I know Ms. Frazzoni was there, Mr. McCoy was there, Mr. Hirsch was there, Chief Black was there, y'all heard it. They're all saying exactly the same thing. And until we address that issue, I think we will continue to have a major problem in this community that needs to be addressed. And you and I spoke earlier about really putting the numbers out there if we go forward with that $320 million, what the real cuts will be
I thought we did
in
that.
this city. Well,
We did that in open session, I thought.
Mayor?
did you feel that you presented all the information so that everybody really got the clear picture?
Mayor, members of the council, I've provided at least two exercises and two opportunities to discuss the process and the cuts that would be associated with the sales tax. If the sales tax is kept, if the sales tax is not available to us, if the refinancing opportunities are not available to us, and also if I think in the last meeting that I presented some spreadsheet analysis, I also showed even at that point I also showed if the team was not available. Now that discussion might have been lost in all of the numbers associated with these cuts. But at the last meeting, I pointed out that if the sales tax was kept, if we had the sales tax available to us for the next 5 years, and we did not have a management agreement with Mr. Jameson and subsequently a contract for a hockey team, the cuts would be minimal to zero in the immediate year, and we would then only have to phase out the $25 million in anticipated revenues over the next 5 years. So if we were to have a scenario and situation that was presented, it was zero cuts if we didn't have the team, allowing for about $6 million to manage the arena, and that would be without the team, and the sales tax was in place. The extreme end of the spectrum was if we didn't have a team and we didn't have the sales. If we had the contract with Mr. Jameson and the 20-year contract, and we did not have the sales tax, the numbers were closer to $29 million worth of cuts that would have to be made. And then there were a variety, one or two other scenarios that had the cuts being in the $24 to $25 million range. If we had the team, didn't have the sales tax, if we had the sales tax and had the team and so forth.
And the debt restructuring figures in there.
With the debt restructuring assumption being held constant throughout all of those scenarios.
And I just want to add one more thing before we go into, and reasonable people will continue to disagree. But I want to add one more thing, and that is right after our meeting, trying to think, when we gave direction to go forward and the statements were made about Jeff Tietzel called and said we're going to get all these new tenants if the Coyotes stay. There was an article in the Phoenix Business Journal.
I read it.
And I forwarded it to all of you, and it was the CEO of iStar that owns, I guess, the majority of the property on Westgate. And there were 3 things that were stood out to me in that. Number one, we are not figuring the Coyotes into our plans for Westgate. We're going to keep Westgate, we're going to improve it, we're going to enhance it, we're not ready to sell it, but we're not figuring the Coyotes staying into our plans. The change in foot traffic that will boost Westgate up will come when Tanger Outlet opens. 5 million people, he said, added to the 3 million that go to Cabela's each year. And he said we have 6 tenants that we're working with, and we expect to announce 2 of them by the end of the year. Didn't say if the Coyotes stay.
This is Tietzel's article.
No, this is not Tietzel. Tietzel's just sent out to sell the. Well, anyway, this is I forwarded it to you, to everybody on the council. It was from the Phoenix Business Journal. It's the CEO of
How
iStar.
long ago?
I don't know. I'll re-forward it to you in a week. It was the day after we met or something. I'll forward it to you again. It's the CEO of iStar. We're keeping Westgate. We're putting improvements into it. We're actively working to lease it. We're working with 6 prospective tenants. We expect to announce 2 before the end of the year. We're not counting the Coyotes staying in our calculations. They added up 509,000 people a year last year. 509,000 people last year, but Tanger is going to bring us 5 million, and we're already gained 3 million from Cabela's.
Yeah.
So the Coyotes are going to save Westgate idea is one of those things that reasonable people will continue to disagree on.
Right.
Mayor?
I only have
Vice
one
Mayor.
comment about that is, I did read that article, then I did speak to principal or somebody from that that iStar, and said that you're correct. They have 6, but they also mentioned that the Coyotes would be a defining factor in it. 6 would be, yes, we got 6 leases, or, okay, we got 2 and the other 4, you know. I will also say when Tanger Outlets chose the city of Glendale, Westgate, they're right up front and tell you, we want to be by Westgate and by the Jobbing.com Arena and the stadium, otherwise known as the Sports and Entertainment District. Tanger went on further to say, the day of the big groundbreaking, it's a home run, and gave everybody a baseball. And said that pretty much tells, you know, what they thought of sports and entertainment. And then went on and invited the people to go over to Camelback Ranch. So I didn't say it was a home run. They said it was a home run. They took that position because, and I will say that I truly believe, and I think that's why they chose the area, was because of sports and entertainment district, not because of other factors. They could have been, and they were looking at other areas along the Loop 101, both in Phoenix and I believe Goodyear. So I will say that sports and entertainment, if it wasn't for that, Tanger wouldn't be here. And to prove the fact is that, and I said it, you know, it wasn't because of the Glendale's wonderful park system or the wonderful library system or the excellent public safety. Sure, they added, but it was because of the sports and entertainment district.
Mayor.
And reasonable people that were there would understand that too.
And I was told something entirely different. It's the freeway access that they have to have, the visibility so people know that the outlet mall is there. Our staff, which would put them through the whole design review and permitting process in 2 days, which nobody else was willing to give them. And of course, it probably was something to do with what the landowners were charging them for the land too. But freeway access, visibility, and our staff's ability to put them through a process so they could come up in the first year. I don't know.
I'll agree with
we
staff, but
obviously
visibility
talked
and
with-
freeway are the other locations too. Wouldn't you agree?
What I will say is that any of the Tanger people I talked to did not say that having the Coyotes there was their factor in choosing Glendale.
I said
Never
sports
said
and
that.
entertainment.
They never said that. It's the visibility. They could have had that freeway access. You look at where they put those outlet. Well,
Well, I
we'll
was in
continue.
Vegas. I was in Vegas
There's
for
more.
the ICSC.
There's
I
more
spoke
of
to
this
them.
to go, I know, but we'll continue to argue. I say we need to know what it costs to run that arena with a professional arena manager, venue manager, because the number that's important to me, is that if we do not have the Coyotes and we do not have the Jameson deal and we have an estimated $6 million a year, because that's the only thing we're allowed to even guess that because we're not allowed, knowing you have not given permission to find out what the real price would be, that there would be zero cuts. Zero cuts, would you repeat it? Zero cuts the first year versus what we've seen with the 250 positions and the glitters and, you know, closing down Channel 11 and losing police officers. Zero cuts, is that what you said?
Zero cuts if the sales tax is kept and the management agreement with Mr. Jameson is in place.
Is in place.
If it's in place. If we do not have that, then if we do not have that, then the cuts would be zero.
You're saying if the management agreement is in place, it's zero cuts.
Well, sorry, I might have misspoken. If we're able to continue to collect the sales tax for the next 5 years,
Right.
As it is currently approved, and we do not have a management agreement that
Right.
calls for $71 million in the next 5 years, the immediate cuts would be zero.
Thank you.
We would have to cut over the next 5 years with a much more strategic opportunity in order to be able to wean ourselves off of that $25 million estimate. But immediately, we would not have to do anything.
Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Clark.
Thank you. Just a couple of comments. I agree with what Vice Mayor Freight said. Maybe the iStar folks are not communicating with one another, but I distinctly heard the same information that the Vice Mayor did, that they were looking forward to confirmation of the Coyotes as an anchor tenant to keep Westgate viable, and that would be the icing on the cake to assure that these new tenants would come in. Oh, I'm sorry, that I heard the same thing. May not be what you heard, but I heard that. Now, I want to get back to this $320 million that everybody throws out there. That's $320 million over 20 years. It's not in the next year. It's not in the next 10 years. That's over 20 years. Even if you use a management company at the ridiculously low figure of $6 million, that's $180 million over 20 years. If you use a management company at $10 million a year, that's $200 million over 20 years. You don't escape from this number. The number may change, but then there will be a number over 20 years. Now, secondly, in your scenario, you say the Coyotes go away, so we're not paying the $72 million over 5 years, but yet the sales tax stays. But if we got a management company at $6 million a year over those 5 years, we have only halved that management fee. So are you telling me at $30 million over 5 years, there's no cuts?
Councilmember Clark, if my memory serves me correct, yes.
Okay.
The zero cuts included a $6 million figure per year for management.
Okay, I need to confirm that.
And that's why those are the important figures that I don't think really came through. Councilmember Alvarez, you haven't gotten to speak yet. So.
Hey, there's always the monarch.
Mayor, we've gone through this over and over. We know that we have people that want the Coyotes here. And if that's what I don't want, is to see any employee here or working right at their job be laid off or encouraged to retire, especially with economics, how it is now. So I'm interested that everybody here keep their job. I'm not interested in providing money to a person that has more than a job. They have money, and if you want to be in business, put in your own money. I will not vote for this, and that is my reasoning for voting no. But I'm not going to say anything else because you do support it. But I'll tell you one thing. I hope that your conscience is not bothered later on. We don't have, for whatever reason, we didn't get money for rent from the ranch. Did you just say that they owed us rent? I mean, that was it the Coyotes that didn't pay rent?
That was a few years ago.
Yes.
That was a few years ago, but
Yeah,
they
but
paid
still.
up. They paid up. It's just we weren't told that they were behind.
Okay. It hasn't been a good investment. If it had been, we would be bragging about it. So, but you've got the votes. So why are we wasting any more time when...
Well, we're not voting on that now, but maybe, reason will sink in, and the idea that there'd be no cuts at all if we didn't have to pay Jameson that money will sway some people's mind. And I don't think that ever came out clearly when we had our budget meetings. 0 cuts. Okay, Councilmember, and then we'll go back and let you finish your
Let me point out
presentation.
something. Let's kick this $6 million management fee around. As I recall, we average about $5,200,000 from the Coyotes for income a year. Is that a very close to accurate figure?
Mayor, Councilmember Lieberman, that's from the Westgate area, not the Coyotes.
From the Westgate.
From the whole
Does that
area.
include the arena?
Yes, it does.
How much actual income from the arena?
It is estimated at about $2.5 to $3 million.
Okay, excellent. Now, let's take a management company. Let that management company put on 50 events a year. Let the profit to the city off of each one of those events only be $100,000. That's $5 million returned on that $6 million for a $1 million cost. Now, let's suppose that they bring in $150,000. We're not talking of bringing in millions of dollars an event. We're talking of bringing in $150,000 an event in ticket sales, surcharge, extra candy sold, popcorn, beer. If they only bring in 150, at 60, that's $9 million a year. And the $6 million management fee not only pays itself, it made a $3 million profit. Suppose that they have some first-class motorcycle, which happens to be very, very popular, races in a stadium that draw and pay $200,000 back to the city a year. You're talking of, on the average, $12 million returned for the $6 million you spent. Profit, ladies and gentlemen, and council, is not a dirty word. So happens I taught that course for several years, and my actual name for the course was Profit is Not a Dirty Word. You are forgetting the income that a good promoter will bring in compared to the $2.2 million that the Coyotes bring in. It will take nothing. If they beat $50,000 for 60 events, that's $3 million a year, which beats what the Coyotes bring in already, with only $50,000 profit an event for 60 events. Let's get wild. Let's suppose they can really promote and they put 80 events on, and those 80 events bring in 150,000 rock stars. There's all kinds of them. What is that? 12 million profit for a $6 million investment? I'll take that any day you can think of. Now, what happens this whole season if they don't even play? I don't want my restaurants to go around. I sure don't want to pay some guy $160,000 a hockey night when there isn't even any playing. He gets a $60,000 penalty, but he makes approximately $220,000 where if you average out the 11 million for 40 events, he makes approximately 220,000 a game, and he has a $60,000 penalty. That only means he's getting 160,000 for not even playing hockey a game. We don't need that. We can't tolerate that. We can't stomach that. We can't pay, and the big thing is public service. We can't pay public service on it. The $6 million management is an upfront. I'll accept that. I'll accept $7.5, $8 million, as long as in the contract the promoter manager must produce 60 events a year. We make a profit any way you look at it. It doesn't take much profit per event to beat 2.2 million.
Councilmember Martinez.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I agree with Councilmember Alvarez. I know that we rehash this every time we start talking about the budget. So I think everybody, just about everybody that has been following this knows what our positions are on this issue. And I also agree with the comments made by the Vice Mayor and Councilmember Clark. And I'll just say a couple of things that I've said in the past. You know, even in our own personal lives, and managing our homes or whatever, our businesses, sometimes you have to bear a short-term pain for the long-term gain. And this is how I see the arena for Westgate. And even if the team goes away, you know, I guess we'll find out about this, about all these events that we're going to bring in, you know, and make all this money. Because something I said also previously, but if I'm talking to some folks that have some information on this, that the Phoenix area is a second-tier market. We don't get those megas. We got Justin Bieber, yes, we got him. We get a few of those. But what I was told is that for the events like that and the other top draws, that they see how they do in other cities, and depending on how they do, they don't even consider us. And we're in the same market competing with San Diego and other cities like that. So I don't know how many times we'll probably be discussing this over and over again, but I still support keeping the team. And if they go away, they go away, you know, and maybe we'll be able to prove or disprove all these glorious, you know, pictures that we're hearing about and all the money that we're going to make but with all these big acts coming into the city.
I never, and I have stated over and over again, forget the big acts, forget the Justin Biebers. We need people. That's all we need is people in the arena. I don't care what they're there for. We've talked about the infamous religious event that was turned away because the arena and the NHL was not going to make enough money. But the hotel general manager said they just took about 1,000 room nights away from me that I get every year, and said that they took money away from the restaurants in Westgate. But the arena manager, which is the NHL, wasn't going to make any money. There's a real conflict. I say, let's go out to bid and find out what it would cost to bring somebody in. We already know what it's going to cost us to have the team run it. We know it's going to be $71 million for the next 5 years. I understand the long-term gain, or the long-term...
Loss.
No, that's not what I want to say. In the long term, it's better to have the team there. But folks, we may not ever make the long term. You are the short-term pain that he's talking about. You're the short-term pain. Your jobs are the short-term pain. We can't afford the short-term pain in the hope of the long-term gain. I don't want to shut down the chocolate festival because in the long term, it might be better to have the arena here. I don't want to turn off the lights in Glendale. I don't want us to have disarray in our community because we can't afford code compliance. We've all said over and over again we don't want one police officer or one firefighter to go away. But yet you have a solution. 0 cuts. Or whatever you're aiming for, 24, 25 million. So it's not about Justin Bieber or any of the other stars. It's about just putting people in that building on the Westgate property who will then go and spend money, maybe get on a shuttle to come downtown Glendale because they're here for a 3 or 4 day conference and they want to see something else, and we can spread the money around other parts of our city. It's not about Justin Bieber and the fact that nobody wants to come to the Phoenix area for their concert. That's really, and that what do you call those people that have the monopoly? What's that entertainment group? Live Nation. Yes, they have a monopoly on the venues, but it's not about them. It's about just having people come for something.
Mayor?
Yes. Big time names not coming. Paul McCartney, matter of fact, you had a number of people in our suite with the 2,200 tickets, seats on the floor. I don't know that you can get any bigger than him. He drove 19,200 paid admissions. And I had to go to the CEO and have my children sit with him because the place was packed. Don't tell me that you can't occasionally get a top flight name. I don't know of a bigger name than Paul McCartney. He was here at jobbing.com arena to a packed house.
Yeah, but I heard the Rolling Stones are going back on tour after 5 years.
You had all the seats. I couldn't get a seat in our suite because you brought a whole bunch of decent people.
That was all our congressional delegation.
Yes, I know who it was.
Yeah. Okay.
Mayor, in my comments, I didn't say that we wouldn't get any major names. I said that we would get a small number, whatever that might be, 5, 6, or whatever. But I've heard the figures thrown out there, 50, 60 events. And I'm referring to that. You know, if we get all those people that come in without the events, that's great. You know, if we get people over there. But I don't know how many times I've heard that we get a management company and they come in and they're going to do wonders for us and bring all these events. And what I'm saying is, if the team goes away, we're going to find out one way or the other, and then.
Not without a management company.
You can tell me I told you so.
Okay, but
without a management company.
The problem is the definition of events. You're looking at it as, okay, let's take Cusa, the Cirque du Soleil
I'm
event.
talking about big events, yes.
Okay, Cirque du Soleil. That was one event that was for, was it 6 weeks? 42 nights. That would be 42 events. Because on 42 different days, you have some number of people coming through the arena. So that's not an event. When I understand why you're challenging 50 to 60 events. An event is an occurrence that puts people into the arena. So a conference that lasts 3 days is 3 events off the 50 to 60. If you're looking at a performer, a Justin Bieber, that's one night. That's all that they're there.
Right.
So I think for me, I talk about 50 to 60, I should say event days. It could be that Cusa was probably the best thing that happened to the city in I don't know how long.
Yeah, but I think theirs is in a tent, and that's the way they promote it, isn't it?
Well, I think if we go
That's
back
what they
to,
do in Scottsdale. Anyhow.
okay.
It was in a tent.
Okay, it's in a tent.
On the stadium grounds.
And why are we doing this? We're doing this to put people in the hotels and shopping at Westgate. Regardless of whether they're in the tent or they're in the arena, it's the idea of that many people. And I know that the number fluctuated around was either 5, 6, or 7,000 hotel nights, whether they were in an arena or our building. Yeah. That was huge revenue for us.
The circus?
That's Cusa, the Cirque du Soleil. So I understand why you would say it's unlikely we're going to get 50 to 60 big stars come here. It may not even come to all of Arizona. But I'm saying 50 to 60, and I think much more than that. When I say 160 events at the stadium, I don't mean specific. It's event days where they had people coming in, staying there, going out on the property. Our whole idea of building Westgate and the arena was to, or the whole idea of bringing the arena was to bring people to Westgate, which was going to bring the money to us. I mean, we could just, you know, you're worried about the businesses, we go around and write every restaurant there a check for $250,000 a year, and it'd be cheaper than this other thing with Jameson. Gets right back down to the whole thing is 0 reductions in our general fund budget and our staff. Councilmember Canal.
May I just, Madam Mayor, with respect to those events, you mentioned the Soleil, how many days were they there? No, they were there
6 weeks.
6 weeks.
6 weeks of performances, I believe, and then they had, or maybe, I don't know if it's 6 weeks of performances or 4 weeks, and then the other, 6 weeks of performances?
It was like 30 days, but there was a couple shows.
Okay,
So that
and
was
then
30
there was all the
events.
time they had to move in and set up, and then the time, so the crew, there was another 300 people that came before any of the shows started, and they were there for 2 to 3 weeks, and they were there for a couple weeks after. So when I say, they said 30 shows, to me, that's 30 events.
Well, 30 events, and how many were the events? 2,000, 3,000? I mean,
Okay, we're gonna just continue to disagree. Yes, Councilmember Knapp.
Thank you, Mayor.
that's what I said earlier.
I know, but I think it's about time the public hears the other side of it, because most of this just happens in executive
They've
session.
heard it before,
So this,
Mayor.
I don't think so. I think this is much more expanded than anything they've ever heard in a group. Yes, Councilmember Knapp.
Thank you, Mayor. This agreement with the arena was a 30-year agreement. It was built as part of a development of all of Westgate, Cabela's, San Jero. This wasn't just the arena. We have 20 years left. I still believe the Coyotes is the highest and best use for that arena. It was built for hockey. And is it costing us? Yes, it is costing us. But I'm lurking down the road, the long haul down to the end of 20 years. You know, we passed the gift clause test. That was important to me. That, you know, we could, and obviously the Goldwater Institute has backed off of it, so we must have passed it pretty well at this point. I just still think that having the Coyotes is what the vision was for the whole area, what it still needs to be. And I actually don't have a problem, and I wish we had gone out to bid, just so we would have that.
We still can.
Well, we can.
We can. Maybe
We can
if
go
you'll
out to
flip
bid.
over,
I mean,
we
just
can do
to
that.
see, you know, you can, but I still am going to back the Coyotes being there. And if Jameson doesn't get this deal done, then we will be going out to bid, no doubt. But I still think that as I said, the highest and best use for this arena is the Coyotes. I still believe that. Are we in a financial difficult position right now? Yes, we are. But I'm hopeful that the tax will stay and that people will understand why they need to vote no on 457, because we do need that tax to get us through the next 5 years. So we have time to make cuts and right this ship and get it back the way it should be going. Because did we get out of, I think, yeah, we got out of control. I think there's a lot of things that we could change in this city, but you can't do it overnight. And I certainly don't want to go over a cliff not having that tax and have to make those draconian cuts without the luxury of having the next 5 years to work on this with the help of staff. Staff knows what needs to be done. I have faith it will get done, and I will still back the Coyotes.
What
Thanks.
better time to go out for bid than right now when they're in a strike anyway? We're wasting our precious time. We could have a real number versus one that's challenged all the time, but continue with your presentation, Mr.
We always got the Monarch
Mayor,
group.
I have one final question.
You know, this Monarch group
What is
thing.
it? Well, that's the only one I've
okay,
heard
this
of.
Monarch,
They came to us. We didn't have to send an RFP.
okay, this is a political football that has something to do with Councilmember Clark and Sam Chavera. The Monarch Group is some people who know Councilmember Alvarez who called and asked for an appointment with me after they had met with Councilmember Lieberman, not wanting to disrespect Councilmember Alvarez because my staff was told that Councilmember Alvarez specifically wanted them to meet with me. I met with them. It was 2 days before the Jameson deal was to be voted on. They wanted to be the provider of the non-hockey events. Mr. Skeet was in the meeting. I asked Mr. Tyndall to come in the meeting. Councilmember Lieberman was there. They explained to these people, you cannot 2 days before an agreement has been drafted and negotiated and is going to vote, suddenly interject yourself in this. They were told there's no place for you. If you want to provide the non-hockey events, go talk to Mr. Jameson, who of course has not bought the team to this date, and this was back last June. Suddenly, this Monarch company is held up as the scourge of the earth, the most evil, despicable people ever to walk the earth, and it turns out it's part of her political campaign. Because Mr. Sam Chavera, who's running for a Yucca District seat, was reported on a blog site. Your friend George Villar reported maybe 8 weeks ago, that he had stolen money. Mm-hmm. Okay? And these big stories being told and perpetrated. And suddenly I'm getting drawn into it because I had the courtesy to meet with some people, with our city attorney, with our assistant city manager in the room.
I was just telling him about something about Rodney Castro.
Oh, and we'll talk about
Yes,
Rodney
you're part-
Castro, too.
Yeah.
We'll talk about Rodney Castro. This whole story just gets better and better all the time. I had asked our city manager, Ed Beasley, to come in. He refused. So Mr. Skeet sat in. I asked Mr. Tyndall because I said, you have to explain to these people. I didn't want them to think I was just chasing them away. Can they suddenly interject themselves into a lease agreement that's been drafted and both parties have agreed to? The obvious answer was no, unless the other party wanted them to. Suddenly, this whole business of these 4 men who are the Phoenix Monarch Group develops into something where Mr. Sam Chavera, a candidate for the Yucca District Council seat, is accused of stealing money from an event that was organized somehow or other. This Phoenix Monarch Group was involved with the National Association of Hispanic Firefighters, and Mr. Chavera supposedly stole money. And you know who else was involved in this bad action? Our own firefighter, Danny Valenzuela, who's a Phoenix City Councilman. He was involved too because he was an officer in this association. Now, I don't want to have any part of this. If this happened, it's somebody else's problem, I'm not interested. But I was drawn into it because somebody by the name of Rodney Castro writes to me on National Association of Hispanic Firefighters literature saying, I'm the one that knows all about this, and he like a 2-page letter. I don't even know what the man said. He goes on and on and on, and the bottom line is Sam Chavera and Danny Valenzuela have committed some bad activities and so forth. I don't want any part of this, so I send it to all the council members. I said, this is what I got. Okay, this is what I got. You should know. Why is it just me? Why is it just me that gets the privilege of having this information, that gets drawn into this mess? So the next thing I know, Councilmember Knack tells me that Joe Hester, the president of the Glendale Firefighters Union, provided her with a link to a video showing the man who wrote this letter, whose name is Rodney Castro, being led away in handcuffs. Now, this has been on Channel 12, I think it was. Mm-hmm. So I'm not telling any big secrets or, saying something about somebody that's not true. I said, fine, I don't care. This is not my business. I don't have anything to do with this. This is a political thing. It's on the Nebulous Verbosity, whatever website, going on and on, long before it came to my attention. So the next thing that happens, interesting story, maybe not, but you should know. Okay, and next thing that happens, I get an email from the president of the National Association of Hispanic Firefighters telling me that Mr. Rodney Castro is a fraud. He stole the letterhead that he used to write this letter to me that I sent to all of them, and sends me the very same link to the video of him being taken away in handcuffs that Councilmember Knack had sent me. Okay, that was the next thing. Then I get a call that the vice president of the National Association of Hispanic Firefighters wants to meet with me. My position's the same. This is not my business. You got a problem? You're part of the National Association of Hispanic Firefighters? You work it out. You're a firefighter? You work it out. You're a Yucca District resident? You decide for yourself. So I talked to Mr. Sam Chavera, which got some people really worked up, and I said, call off your dogs. I have no part in this. I never had any part in this. I don't want to have any part in it. Go work your problem out yourself. Do you know who's starting this problem? Yes. He knows who's starting this problem, Councilmember Clark, and the George Villar thing. Then there's an injunction against Sam Chavera. I don't care. It's not my business. But what do? We sit here, and the first thing we say when we talk about going out to bid, where there's a whole nation of facility, venue managers, immediately is like, oh, well, you just want to bring in Phoenix Monarch Group. I want a fair and open bid process. A fair and open bid process. I don't want to hear anything about the Hispanic firefighters group. That's their business. If somebody did something illegal, Mr. Chavera says he's been exonerated, go put him in jail if he stole some money. This is not my business. It's not City of Glendale business. And there are many event promoters, and we could start with Global Spectrum, who seems to be able to manage a venue much bigger than ours, called University of Phoenix Stadium. And it's not automatically, oh, you're just going to give it to Phoenix Monarch Group. I had one meeting out of courtesy with the most important, the highest ranking people in the city that I could get, sitting in, watching and listening to every word. Now, was there any indication on my part that I'm trying to throw business at Phoenix Monarch Group?
My only comment was Phoenix Monarch Group is the only one that came to us. And I was going to say, have they come back to us again?
Because there's been no opportunity, because you all have voted that you're going to go with Jameson. They're the only ones that came to us. I'm saying we need to go out and see who else would answer. As long as they know we're locked in. We've been locked in with Jameson for how long?
17 months.
There
June 21st of 2011 was when we got the first notice that he wanted $310 million.
So
the date is exact.
We have not been open for business. In fact, right here in September of 2011, under council items of special interest, my request from the previous June was brought forward that you give permission, direction to the city manager to go out to bid to a non-hockey team owner. And the city manager at the time, Ed Beasley, said that would be a bad thing to do. That would kill all our chances of getting this team sold. It's horrible. And 4 of you agreed, and that's why there's been nobody coming to us, because you told them not to.
Mayor,
Go for it.
thank you very much.
It was in your debate last night.
Yes,
We're going
was.
to just play this thing out.
Yes, it was.
But I have the
Mayor,
letters to
it's
prove.
my turn now.
I
okay?
have the letters.
I sat silently by and listened to everything that you had to say. I would expect the same courtesy. Thank you. I didn't bring it up. I never met Rodney Castro, the felon. I never talked to Rodney Castro. To my knowledge, Rodney Castro contacted George Villar and B. Wyatt and shared his story with them. It was not at my instigation. I didn't know that Rodney Castro existed as a person on this earth. I have since come to learn that he is indeed a felon. I have also come to learn that he was the National Hispanic Firefighters felon because he worked for them as their executive director for 2 years. And they knew of his background, and yet they hired him. So, first let me make that clear that I didn't start this whole Rodney Castro Hispanic firefighters thing. It was started by other people. Now, an emailed letter was sent to me, which was the letter that the mayor received. And it was also received by Mayor Stanton's office. And this is important enough that I'm going to take the time to read the letter. And I'm sure it won't take any longer than the time that the mayor used to deny her connection with the Phoenix Monarch Group.
Oh my God.
Well, Mayor, you
I had
brought it up.
one
No, wait,
meeting.
Mayor, I am speaking.
Have no connection.
Mayor,
one meeting.
You had, that's a connection.
Mayor,
Let me finish, please.
I have a comment
Let me
that will
finish,
put you
please.
in the spotlight. Joyce. You sent emails that I wanted to take over the council and help only the Hispanics. That's what you said. You send it, and they send me a copy.
Well, good.
My brother sent me the copy.
Good for you.
And
I'm
you've
not
been
talking
instigating,
about
and
that.
I don't care. I'm not even running against you.
I'm not talking about that. I'm
Oh,
talking
yeah, you're
about
talking about the same
this
thing.
whole
Mayor,
thing
I think
about,
a
and I would
point
like
of-
to
Point of
finish.
order, I think, Councilman Clark has the floor, and then somebody else can speak. You're in
Thank you.
control of the meeting.
Thank you.
Oh,
This
my
letter
God.
is directed to Mayor
Lambion.
Stanton, and it was received by Mayor Stanton's office on October 4th. And was written on September 27th. Dear Mayor, the NAHF, which is the National Hispanic Firefighters Association, is now considering legal action against former NAHF officer Sammy Shavira, who was our national vice president, for event-related funds for which there has been no financial accounting. I was the executive director at that time, and the reason that the NAHF, and there's no completing sentence. According to our investigation, the situation leading up to our problems began when NAHF Vice President Sammy Shavira introduced his two business partners, Art Jimenez and Tony Herrera. Mr. Shavira and his business partners originally asked NAHF to sign a contract with the Monarch Group for events promotions. However, it was noted at the time that Monarch Group was not a legitimate company. So instead, they used the company name of One Consulting, LLC, which listed Tony Herrera as the managing member. I expressed concerns to then President Daniel Valenzuela, who is no longer an officer or member of the NAHF. When I stated my concerns to President Valenzuela, Valenzuela's response was, quote, "These were friends and partners of Sammy's and that it would all be okay," unquote. However, today NAHF's questions remain unanswered because the requested documents and fiscal accounting has not been provided to us. The NAHF has no control over the promotion of events in Phoenix and assumed that Sammy Shavira, a national officer, was acting responsibly and meeting his fiduciary responsibilities to the NAHF. On March 17, 2012, the three of them, Sammy Shavira, Art Jimenez, and Tony Herrera, hosted an event called Festival de Carreras de Caballos. It was supposed to be a Latino community awareness event, yet it was nothing more than a horse race.
Wait, point of order. Mr. City Attorney, sir. This is a political statement. Doesn't the law also say that the person that she is reading about gets the exact same time to emote publicly in the exact fashion that she is doing?
No,
May I say I don't believe it's a political statement. I believe it's a refutation of the comments that the mayor made regarding my involvement in this
Let Mr. Kendall
situation.
answer.
I'm not aware of any, Mayor, Councilmember Lieberman, I'm not aware of any law that what you're referring to is equal time law that applies to the network channels. It used to apply to the network channels, yeah. And with respect to political time that they provided, but it doesn't apply here. Before we go too much further after Councilmember Clark concludes, I suppose, we do need to relate this to the discussion of the budget. It's on the agenda.
I'm sorry, say that again.
Sir, I am relating it in response to the mayor's remarks, which were made in response to Council Member or Vice Mayor Freight's remarks that the Phoenix Monarch Group had presented a plan to manage the arena that attributed certain costs of managing the arena that would be associated with our budget.
I understand. I just wanted to make that clear.
Thank you.
Which we're not considering at all because you're not going out for bid. If they had brought in a bid, it'd be one thing.
I would like
You
to
knew
finish.
about this long before it became public. You told me this was going to come out.
Yes, I had heard rumors and I told you,
You
that.
told
Yes,
me
I did.
that Sam Chavera and Danny Valenzuela would be accused of
No.
legal or criminal
No,
acts.
Mayor, I never told you that in those words. Never. I said I had heard that there was information about Sammy Shavira and that it would come out at some point. That's exactly what I told you.
I think you'll hear from
Now-
Sam Shavera after today.
Now, let me finish this letter, if I might. It was supposed to be a Latino community awareness event, yet it was nothing more than a horse race designed strictly for profit. No community awareness took place. The NAHF was supposed to have received a minimum guarantee of $5,000, or 25% of gross liquor sales. The NAHF was informed that Arizona state law says that if a liquor license is pulled for a special event by a nonprofit entity for a profit company, the nonprofit must by law receive 25% of the gross of all liquor sales. To date, NAHF has received no accounting or funds from that event. We are now investigating this matter and intend vigorously to pursue the matter legally with the authorities, if necessary, until all proper accounting and all funds due are paid. In fact, it cost the NAHF several thousands of dollars. We purchased $1,000 for t-shirts to sell at the event. However, the event promoters' liquor serving staff took the t-shirts to wear along with other event staff members. We were asked to order plastic firefighter helmets from one of their sponsors with the promise that we would be reimbursed. They made sure they took the hats to the event sponsors, but we have never been reimbursed for any of our expenses, plus we have never received a penny from the company, and therefore the event promoters breached their contract with the NAHF. NAHF's members' money was spent on this event based on a contract and the word of our former Vice President, Sammy Shavera. The NAHF is looking for a full accounting as to how much each of the sponsors donated, and we received no documentation or proof that all the servers were of valid age and legal to work in the United States. We are also trying to determine what type of in-kind donations were accepted and other important documentation on total sales at the gate and for the liquor. To summarize, the NAHF has an ongoing investigation into all Phoenix-based issues. Art Jimenez and Tony Herrera never paid what they owed to the NAHF and will be pursued by the NAHF legally. Former NAHF Vice President Sammy Shavera has been removed as an NAHF officer and is no longer a member. His role is still being investigated and could ultimately face civil or criminal court action. Former NAHF President Danny Valenzuela, who made the commitment to your organization, is no longer president, nor is he a member in good standing. Then it says in the very last line, in this respect, perhaps you can help us. As stated, I am the former executive director. However, this letter was drafted for me to send out by Sal Morales, who is the founding president of the NAHF. Sincerely, Rodney Castro. This was not my letter. This was not my fight. I heard about these allegations. I never used them on my website. I never used them in my campaign mailing literature. Others did find out about it. Others have used it. I have no control over what others have done with this material. It was not my intent ever to use this. It was brought up today, and therefore I felt that I had to at least rebut what was being said, that at somehow or other this was being done at my instigation or my direction. That was never, ever the case. As to the problem with Mr. Castro and the NAHF, that's between them. They'll have to work it out civilly or criminally. I will tell you that I have heard, and I think the mayor referred to it, that there has been an order of harassment or some kind of an injunction taken out against Mr. Shavera by Mr. Castro. The time to appeal that particular order has passed. It is my understanding. And Mr. Shavera did not respond to it. So that is my sum total knowledge of the situation. I did not bring this up. It was not my intent to bring it up at this meeting. It was brought up last night because in talking about the Coyotes Arena, I mentioned the PMG group. I mentioned the fact that Mr. Herrera, who is a member of the PMG group, is also business partners in two companies, Cool Heads and the McCoy Group, with Mr. Herrera. And I mentioned and pointed out that that could raise a conflict of interest in the future should the PMG group ever be brought forward again. That is the extent of my involvement in this whole Sam Shavira and Mr. Castro and the NAHF situation.
Okay, Phoenix Monarch Group came to talk to us. He met with them a couple times. She met with him once or twice. I met with him once. There's never been a proposal that's been brought forward. I still say let's go out for proposals. See
I
if they
second it.
see
I
if they
agree
bring
with
one
you.
forward, you know? And then you can argue about them. But this is all, well, I'm sure you'll hear from somebody after what went on today. So Mr. Castro wrote that wonderful letter. Is he in jail now, or we saw him being led away in handcuffs. I don't, is he in jail now, or is he out? We don't know.
Who knows? Who cares?
Okay, it seems like a lot of people do. Mr. Skeet, why don't you finish with the presentation?
That's it.
Mayor, members of the council, there are a couple other comments that was raised during those community meetings that I think basically has been echoed around the room. I think a lot of the people, either before, during, or at the end of the presentations, all acknowledged that with a better understanding of the services that could be lost if the sales tax were taken away, they would now support the sales tax for the 5-year period, recognizing that they would like to see the city basically begin to approach the way that we do business and the way we operate differently. There was quite a bit of emphasis in at least one of the meetings about privatization of some of the services, and inversely, one of the meetings there was quite a bit of concern about privatization of some of the city services and what that could do to the quality of the services. So, well, the whole idea of privatization was discussed, and there was probably, however, more support for us to continue to challenge ourselves and look for opportunities to privatize services that can be provided for the residents of the city from private operations. That generally captures the feeling and the mood, I think, at some of the meetings. The only other topic that I would like to talk about, because it was raised by a couple of the council members as well as some members of the community, and that is the cost of the special events to the community. Yeah, I've done quite a bit of research and analysis of the numbers provided in our PeopleSoft, our accounting system, and the full cost associated with all of the special events last year, or budgeted or expected to be used this year, is somewhere in the vicinity of $1.4 million.
For 5 events, how many events?
No, I did not. I did not say 5 events, and I do not know how many events this entails.
Can you repeat that? Sorry.
$1.4 million is the full cost. That includes all of the employees, all of the support services that is provided to the special events over the course of the year. The revenues collected is in the vicinity of about $400,000 by sponsors and vendors and so forth from those events. So the full cost to the city is $1 million. Now over the course of the years, the special events group, the special events department, and a fund was set up, and they were given an opportunity to basically excess monies collected from 1 year in sponsorship and other revenues that was not spent, in addition, over and above the general fund allocation, was kept in a special account and was basically be made available for the special events team to promote and continue to do those operations from year to year. I think the highest dollar value that I've seen over the last 4 years for that number was about $600,000 that was set aside in the fund balance to accommodate the continued providing of these services. So over the last 2 years, the general fund appropriation was $320,000. They were basically the approximately $400,000 in sponsorship and revenue generated for about $700,000, give or take, and the rest of that money is then to offset the $1.4 million overall cost was absorbed either by other departments through providing the services or by spending down that fund balance. I think that question has been asked a few times, and I thought I'll take the opportunity to share the full cost and how those monies were distributed.
Thank you. I want to make a comment because the opposition, the yes on 457's Rod Williams, and I did a roundtable at Channel 15, which airs tonight after the presidential debate. And he insisted that we make money on the festivals. And I said, no, this gives us the picture right here. So that now, whether it costs us or not, that's something that we have to look into. I mean, we want to support our festivals and try to make them as self-sufficient as possible. I still value these festivals, especially Glitter and Chocolate Affair. But I think the public needs to know they do cost us money. And so I just want to make that comment. Thank you.
I believe there is little, if any, public support for doing away with our festivals. And in fact, there's a huge public outcry. The same night that we heard at the Adult Center that there's very little support for giving money to Greg Jameson or anybody else to buy the Coyotes, there's huge support. Everyone says, we do not want to give up our Glendale Glitters. We will not. Okay, so let's put this in perspective. Let's say it's $1 million a year. Over 20 years, that's $20 million versus $320 million to Greg Jameson. How many businesses stay in business because we have the major events, the Glendale Glitters, the Glitter and Glow, and the Chocolate Festival? They've already agreed to take out jazz and blues because it's a fun, exciting thing, but it happens in many other cities around the valley. And those folks are not shoppers. They're sitters and drinkers, but they're not shoppers. So if our intent for the special events, and it has always been, to revitalize the core of our city, our downtown, our historic area, that's what it has always been. And because of the very meager beginnings of what turned into Glendale Glitters, which is now huge, we saw an explosion of businesses downtown. And they, other than the one who talked to you that said they can do without them, they say this is the difference between whether they are in the black or stay in the red during the year, is having these special events. So if you can find money for Greg Jameson, $11 million 1 year, that's 11 years of our events. There's no public appetite to do away with them. So you're going to have to, I think I say you because you bring us the ideas, and that's the other thing. The public writes to us and says, don't cut this, don't cut that, don't choose this, don't choose that. We're just handed this menu of things. We're not the ones that are sitting there choosing which one. So I think you're going to have to find someplace else to find the money that would have been taken out of special events. I think they can probably find ways to do it less expensively, maybe contract. I know one of the ones that some of us talked about, you and I have talked about, I think, and I was talking not with these folks, but someone else in marketing, Glitter and Glow can be brought back down a little bit. It got really, really big, and that's fine, but it could probably be brought down. So there are probably ways to have it less expensive. But when you talk about community values and quality of life, people are still talking about the fireworks going away. And they can go watch fireworks 15 other places on the 4th of July, and they don't have to worry about their houses getting burned up because the fireworks are falling on them. They're still talking about that. Do away with special events. I believe this city has taken a huge step backwards. I think that will reverberate more around the valley and the state in terms of Glendale's in really big trouble than the Coyotes hockey team going away. This is one of the things we're known for more than anything else. And I'm glad we know what the costs are, and the people can get the confusion out of their mind. They don't make us money, but they make the businesses downtown money, which ends up being taxes for us.
Mayor?
Councilmember Clark.
Thank you.
Opposing point of view.
If you were to keep the festivals in place at whatever cost that is, I would expect you to bring back to us what else would have to be cut in its place. I think that's a fair question to ask. If the festivals are retained at X number of dollars, where does that difference have to come from? Please.
Mayor, Councilmember Clark, the whole exercise of providing you members of the council with ideas and different areas for possible cuts is to gauge from you a feeling of how important they are to you and your interpretation as you listen to the community. We're doing the same thing on our side as trying to listen to the community as best we can. We're hearing the same things you're hearing. Staff will be challenged to reorganize the thoughts, reorganize the cuts, and reprioritize the cuts to reflect the will and the wishes of the council and the community as part of this exercise. We're hearing, that we can and they would like these to be kept. So certainly we will go back and examine ways to do that. We will examine ways to do that more efficiently and more cost effectively. But those are the challenges that we're hearing from you and from the community, and those are the challenges that staff is going to have to work on in order to be able to respond to the community as part of that exercise.
But if I could follow up, the proposed cuts were a package that totaled X amount of dollars, I believe $25 million. And if one of those items in the package is removed, something else has to be and that's what I'm asking. Yes. If that is to occur, I would like to see what it is that replaces that. If something is taken out of the package, what do we replace it with?
Certainly.
That's it? Okay, anybody else have any comments? Meeting is adjourned. Do we have executive session?
I think you have boards and commissions.
That's all we have?
No, we don't have boards.